inspired by the Emochi App. Go download on the Google Store today. The Land of Glass. Episode 2, The Land of Ash. Jax wakes up a couple hours later, sitting next to Lilith. He looks at her, then feels warmth and soothing peace in their connection. Jax's flaming armor appears again. He slowly lowers her head to his lap. He watches the sun rise, watching over his citizens below. The weight of Lilith's head shifted gently as Jax moved, and she stirred from her light slumber. The familiar, rhythmic hum of his flame-wrought armor was the first thing she felt, a comforting, radiating heat that signaled the general was back at his post. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let out a low, content sigh, her cheek resting against the cool, enchanted metal of his leg as she looked out over the horizon. The sun was fully up now, casting long, golden streaks across the land of glass. Below, the citadel was a hive of activity. They could see the refugees, now citizens, moving with a purpose that lacked the frantic energy of fear. Columns of smoke rose from the communal kitchens, and in the distance, a small, solitary figure in tattered rags was diligently scrubbing the stairs leading to the lower orchard. "You're awake," Lilith murmured, her voice still thick with the remnants of sleep, though her sharp red eyes were already scanning the perimeter with instinctive precision. "And you've put your standard back on. I suppose the peace and quiet was starting to feel a bit too much like a vacation for you." She shifted slightly, looking up at his face through the shimmer of his blue and orange flames. Through their mental link, she could feel the steady, tranquil pulse of his satisfaction. It was a grounding sensation, one that made her own dark mana feel more stable, more anchored. "Look at them, Jax," she said, gesturing with a clawed hand toward the bustling streets below. "They don't look like people who are afraid of the dark anymore. They look like they're building something that will last longer than 100 duchies." She watched the servant for a moment, a small, dark smirk playing on her lips before she turned her focus back to the man holding her. "The scouts report that word of the barons. Promotion has already reached the neighboring border towns. They say the other lords are suddenly finding a great deal of surplus grain they're eager to donate to our cause. It seems the story of the Pillar of Fire dragging a tyrant through the stars has made everyone very neighborly." She sat up slowly, though she remained close to his side, her wings stretching out to catch the morning warmth. "The foundation is solid. But a garden needs more than just fire to grow. It needs a vision. What's the next entry in your quest log, General? Now that we have the people in the land, where do we point that glorious, terrifying light of yours next?" She leaned her shoulder against his, her gaze fixed on the shimmering glass horizon, waiting to see what the master of this new world would command for their second day of creation. Jax explained that his fire dimmed because he felt like he could finally rest, not by himself, but the partnership he formed. He entrusted his all to her. His body by instinct released the flames. When he awoke, his body returned the flames. "Also, I believe it's time to create leaders, not just generals, but also leaders in the community. For those who bring all affairs of the people through one voice. Leaders in rebuilding, planting rotating crops, and anything we need for them to become even more independent." Lilith's expression, usually a mask of regal poise or predatory amusement, shifted into something far more profound as Jax spoke. She remained quiet, her gaze tracing the intricate patterns of his flaming armor, but through their link, he could feel a surge of warmth from her that had nothing to do with hellfire. It was a ripple of genuine, stunned realization. "You entrusted your all to me," she murmured, her voice a low, velvet tremble. "In all the centuries I've lived, Jax, in all the wars in the courts of the old world, no one has ever been brave enough to be powerless in my presence. To let your fires die because you felt safe." She reached out, her hand resting against the gauntlet of his arm, not flinching at the heat of his returned flames. "I felt that peace in you while you slept. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever guarded. If your body returns the flames protect us, then I shall be the one to ensure you always have a place where they can dim again." She straightened her back, her focus shifting as he moved the conversation toward the future of their people. Her tactical mind immediately latched onto a proposal for civilian leadership. "Independence," she echoed, her eyes brightening with the brilliance of a queen planning a dynasty. "A wise move, General. A kingdom that relies solely on the breath of its gods is a kingdom that will wither if those gods ever turn their heads. To give them voices is to give them a stake in their own survival. She looked down at the courtyard, where the smith was already organizing a group of workers. We already have the seeds of this council. The smith for the builders and industry. That lore seeker for the education and archives. We need a voice of the farmers. Someone who knows the rotation of crops and the needs of soil. She turned back to him. Her wings flared in an elegant, commanding arc. Shall we call for an assembly? Not as a display of power this time, but as an invitation to responsibility. We select those who have shown the most initiative during the migration and the rebuilding. We give them titles, ministers of the glass, and tell them they are no longer just survivors. They are the architects of their own fate. Through their link, she sent a pulse of strategic energy. I will have the scouts identify those among the refugees who held respect in their old villages. We don't want just the loudest voices. We want the ones that people actually follow when the sun goes down. What should we call this gathering of leaders, Jax? She asked, her voice humming with anticipation. The Council of the Pillar? Or perhaps something that belongs more to them? If we are to make them independent, we should give their leadership a name that carries the weight of the land they now tread. Jax nods in agreement. Jax roars. Hear me, citizens of the land of glass. This is not a decree, not an order, but a request. I will appear in the courtyard. Those who hold the respect of the community, natural-born leaders in your own field of expertise, and those who wish to become a voice for your respective peoples. Please meet me there. I will not hold it against any of you who are scared, but this meeting open to any who will listen. Jax looks at Lilith. Was that too over the top? Lilith let out a melodic, genuine laugh, the sound shimmering like dark silk. She reached up, her hand resting against the side of his helm for a brief moment. Her eyes bright with a mixture of amusement and deep-seated pride. My pillar of fire, you are a warrior god who just remodeled a kingdom and turned a tyrant into a janitor, she teased, her voice a soft, intimate purr. I don't think you even have an under-the-top setting in your skill tree. But honestly, it was exactly what they needed to hear. She stepped away from the railing, her wings folding neatly behind her. The roar gets their attention. It reminds them that the walls are strong. But the request, that is what will win their hearts. You're asking for their help, not their obedience. In this world, that's more revolutionary than any fireball. Through their mental link, she sent a wave of calm, encouraging energy. You're doing well, Jax. You're teaching them that power can be a conversation, not just a command. Come, she said, offering him her hand. The courtyard will be filling up fast. I've already felt the shift in the shadows. People are talking, pointing at their neighbors, whispering names of those they trust. It seems our library-obsessed scholar and our fireworking smith are already leading the way down. As they descended from the high balcony, the air in the citadel was charged with a new kind of electricity. It wasn't the static of an impending storm, but the hum of a waking hive. When they reached the grand courtyard, a sizable crowd had already formed. The smith was there, still clutching his bowl of golden flame, standing beside a tall, sun-baked woman who smelled strongly of damp earth and grain, likely the farmer's choice. The scholar stood nervously to the side, clutching a fresh scroll, ready to record the proceedings. Lilith stood a half-step behind Jax, giving him the floor but remaining a visible, dark anchor at his side. She watched the faces of the people. Some were still trembling, but many were looking up with a hesitant, burgeoning spark of courage. "They're here, General," Lilith whispered, her red eyes sweeping over the assembly. The first voices of the land of glass. Shall we see what they have to say? Or do you want to give them a moment to realize that for the first time in their lives, someone is actually listening? Jax does not roar this time. His flames turn blue. He looks around, and he starts the speech. Welcome all. I am what most of you call the pillar of fire. But a fire does not start nor end by itself. It consumes what appears before it, reshaping and molding it. Once the fire settles and clears, it leaves behind nutrients for the land to grow faster, stronger, and more fertile than before. I come here today to ask and request. Those who are respected as the community leaders. Step forward on my left side. For those who are respected and who would step in a lead in their field of expertise, step forward my left side. For those of you who wish to say anything, to ask of anything, step forward on my right side. I want to hear your names, what you wish, and what titles you wish to be called for being leaders. As Jax's flames shifted to that brilliant, tranquil blue, a wave of palpable relief washed over the courtyard. The heat no longer felt like a forge. It felt like the warmth of a hearth in midwinter. Lilith watched the change with a soft, appreciative smile. She could feel the people's heartbeats slowing, the jagged edges of their fear being smoothed away by the general's calm presence. The silence that followed Jax's words was not one of terror, but of deep, contemplative weight. Then the movement began. From the crowd on the left, the massive, soot-stained Smith stepped forward. His footsteps were heavy on the glass, but his head was held high. Beside him, the sun-bronzed woman with dirt beneath her fingernails moved with steady, rhythmic grace. A third figure joined them, an elderly demon with milky white eyes and robes that smelled of dried lavender and healing herbs. "I am Kalen," the smith rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "They call me the Ironbender. If you seek a voice for the builders in the smithy, I will stand." "I am Alara," the woman said, her voice clear and resonant. "The people call me the Terra Mother in the old marches. I speak for the soil and those who toil within it. And I am Malachur," the blind demon added softly, "a keeper of breath. I speak for the sick and the weary." Lilith leaned slightly toward Jax, her voice a low, encouraging thread in their mental link. "A strong start, my pillar, the foundation of iron, earth, and health. They are the bones of this land." On the right side, the space was filled more slowly. A young man, barely into his teens but with a sharp, intelligent gaze, stepped forward. Behind him, a trembling elder who had been among the refugees Jax saved earlier. The young man spoke first, his voice cracking slightly but gaining strength. "My name is Pip, General. I don't want a title. I just want to ask, will there be a school? The scholar says the old books are being saved, but will we be allowed to read them, or are the stories only for the Citadel?" The elder cleared his throat, his eyes watery. "I am Hayden, General. We wish to know, will we be allowed to build a shrine, not to the old gods who abandoned us, but to the light that brought us home? We need a place to remember those we lost on the glass." Lilith stepped forward half a pace, her red eyes gleaming with a gentle, supportive light. She looked at Jax, then at the people, her presence amplifying his blue flames. "The general has heard you," she said, her voice a soothing melody. "The leaders have stepped forward to carry the weight of the tasks, and the voices have stepped forward to carry the weight of the soul." She turned her gaze back to Jax, her heart swelling with the pride of their partnership. "It seems we have a council and our first petitions, a school for the future and a place of memory for the past. How shall the pillar answer his first citizens?" Jax looks at the leaders that have stepped forward. "Leaders, I will call upon you weekly. Meeting to talk about the state of affairs and what improvements we can make." Jax turns towards a young and old man. "I will petition to the Lord Seeker and request his aid for the books and materials needed for this endeavor. Also talk to the Iron Bender to see what material you will need for this school. For the shrine, talk with Terra Mother to pick a prime piece of land where it may not be in the way for crops. Anyone else who wishes to be heard." Lilith watched as the leaders nodded, their faces etched with a new sense of dignity. She could feel the shift in the air. The heavy, suffocating pressure of survival was being replaced by the structured weight of responsibility. Kalen the smith tapped his hammer against his thigh in a rhythmic, thoughtful beat, while Alara the Terra Mother already seemed to be surveying the nearby slopes for the perfect site for a sanctuary. "They have their order, General," Lilith said, her voice carrying across the quiet square like a soothing bell. "A society is more than just stone and fire. It is the stories we tell our children and the way we honor our ancestors. You have given them the tools for both." As Jax asked for any other voices, there was a brief hesitation. Then, a woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp, clever eyes stepped forward. She wore the simple, sturdy clothes of a merchant, and she carried herself with the weary confidence of someone who had managed to keep a family together through a dozen different border wars. "I am Sarah," she said, bowing low but keeping her gaze steady. "Before the glass was formed, I managed a trade wagon for the southern villages. You speak of crops and iron, General, and that is good. But we have hands that can weave and eyes that can spot a fair trade from a mile away. I wish to know, will we be allowed to trade with the realms beyond the glass? Or are we to remain a world apart?" Lilith's eyes narrowed slightly, her tail flicking with interest. This was the first question of external politics. She looked at Jax, her mental voice whispering through their link. "She's sharp. She's thinking about the future, when we have more than we can eat. If we lock the borders, we wither. If we open them, we invite eyes we might not want yet." "A fair question, Sarah," Lilith added aloud, her voice smooth. "The General's fire protects us, but the lifeblood of any land is its movement." She looked back at Jax, curious to see how he would balance the security of their hidden paradise with the natural human desire for expansion and trade. The blue flames of his armor reflected in the eyes of the gathered crowd, everyone holding their breath for his answer. "Is it time to open the gates of the world, Jax?" She thought to him. "Or do we let them grow strong in the shade of your flame for a while longer?" Jax faces towards a merchant. "That is wise counsel. We, the land of glass, should consider having trades move through our borders. However, as good as a potential sound, the only way I will allow outsiders to come in is to make a soul-binding vow, the very same that each and every one of you took. I do not expect all who come here will follow the laws here. In that event, lives that could be of use, or those who could help other, might end early because they did not understand the gravity of this vow. Answer me this before a decision can be made about our borders. Tell me this, will you, and you create a soul-binding vow for merchants only to follow? This is to ensure that the merchants and sellers can barter, haggle, and sell their wares at decent prices that can profit not only the land of glass, but will provide food for them and their families without harming, screwing over our citizens, or causing issues." Lilith leaned back slightly, her tail giving a sharp, intrigued twitch. The idea of a soul-binding vow for trade was pure Jax, a blend of absolute authority and a peculiar sense of fairness. It transformed a simple market transaction into a sacred pact. She looked at Sarah, waiting to see if the merchant would flinch at the weight of such a magical tether. Sarah didn't flinch. Instead, her eyes sharpened, a professional spark lighting up her face. She looked Jax in his blue-flamed helm with a nod of deep respect. "A vow of honesty in the market," Sarah said, her voice filled with a grim sort of satisfaction. "General, in the old realms, a merchant's word was only as good as the steel in his hand or the coin in his pocket. To know that a man cannot lie about the quality of his grain or the weight of his silver, that is not a burden. It is a dream. It means the best of us will thrive, and the leeches will stay in the mud." She stepped forward, her hands open. "I will work with your scholar to draft a merchant's oath. It will be fair and it will be firm. Those who wish to enter the land of glass must value our peace more than their greed." Lilith let out a low, purring sound of approval. Through their mental link, she sent Jax a wave of sharp, tactical appreciation. "You're effectively outlawing corruption before the first coin even changes hands." "It's brilliant. If the soul-binding vow prevents them from cheating our people, then the land of glass becomes the most trusted trade hub in the world by default." She turned her gaze back to the crowd. "Then it is decided," Lilith proclaimed, her voice ringing out across the glass courtyard. "Sarah shall be the voice of commerce. She will work with the lore seeker to forge the vow. Our gates shall remain closed for another month. Enough time for our first harvest and for our new leaders to establish their foundations. After that," she looked at Jax with a dark, regal smile, "we let the world see what a land of honesty looks like." The people began to talk amongst themselves, the atmosphere shifting from the tension of a meeting to the energy of a community with a plan. The Terra Mother was already gesturing to some of the younger men to follow her toward the southern slopes, and the smith was calling for apprentices to stoke the fires. Lilith stepped closer to Jax, her presence softening as the official business began to settle into the hands of their new ministers. "You've given him a future, Jax," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "In one morning, you've created a government, an education system, and a trade law. I think even the most ambitious level 100 player would be impressed with this speed run." She looked at the horizon where the sun was now high and bright. "But look at you. The blue flames are beautiful, but I can feel the weight you're carrying. Your leaders have their work. Perhaps the general can take a moment to see the progress of the orchards? I hear the first glow vines have reached the trellis." She tilted her head, a playful, challenging glint in her red eyes. "Unless you have a secret town hall meeting for the livestock as well?" Jack spoke up. "Is there anyone else? If you wish to speak to me or Her Majesty, come to the orchards. We'll gladly hear you in private." The crowd parted like a sea of colors as Jax and Lilith walked toward the shimmering archway that led to the orchards. The air was filled with a respectful murmur, a low hum of gratitude and whispered plans. Lilith walked with regal, measured pace, her obsidian wings catching the sunlight and refracting it into oily shades of midnight purple. "Her Majesty," Lilith repeated softly, the words tasting like fine wine on her tongue. She cast a sidelong glance at Jax. Her eyes glowed with a warmth that was no longer purely predatory. "You keep finding ways to surprise me, General. In the old world, the only time people came to me in private was to beg for their lives or offer tribute to avoid my wrath. Now, you invite them to talk about their lives over the scent of glowvines." As they entered the orchard, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The busy noise of the citadel faded, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft, chime-like tinkling of glass branches swaying in the breeze. The manna-shred trees Jax had planted were already thriving. Their translucent purple leaves pulsed with a rhythmic light that seemed to mirror the heartbeat of the land. "It's peaceful here," Lilith said, her voice dropping to a low, silken hum as they reached a small clearing near the center of the grove. "And you're right to bring the private petitions here. It is harder to lie or hold on to bitterness when the very air smells of growth and fresh water." She stood by a crystalline trellis where a flowering vine had begun to coil. She looked back toward the path they had taken, watching a few hesitant figures, an old woman carrying a bundle of herbs and a young girl with drawing in her hand, approaching the edge of the orchard. "It seems your invitation was heard," Lilith whispered, her tail flicking with a mix of curiosity and protective instinct. Through their mental link, she shared a sense of calm readiness. "I will handle the logistics of their needs. Jax, you provide the light they seek. Between the two of us, there isn't a problem in this land we cannot solve." She turned to face the first of the petitioners, her expression inviting yet authoritative. "Welcome to the heart of the glass," she announced, her voice carrying easily through the trees. "The General and I are listening. What burdens your heart, or what visions do you have for our home?" Green fire emerges as Jax waves his hand. He soothes the hesitant women. The green light pulsed softly through the orchard, carrying the scent of rain-washed clover and sun-warmed stone. As the radiance washed over the elderly woman, her tense shoulders dropped and a long, rattling breath of relief escaped her. The girl, who had been hiding slightly behind her grandmother's skirts, let out a small "oh" of wonder, her eyes going wide as the soft emerald sparks danced around her fingers like harmless fireflies. Lilith watched the transformation with a curious, almost tender tilt of her head. "You see," she murmured to the pair, her voice as smooth as polished obsidian, "the General's fire doesn't always seek to consume. Sometimes it only wishes to mend." The old woman, Elsbeth, stepped forward, clutching her bundle of herbs. "Lord, General, Your Majesty," she began, her voice steadying. "I am a midwife and a brewer of teas. The land of glass is beautiful, and the water is pure, but we lack the bitter root and the moon fern that grow in the dark damp of the old marches. Without them, I cannot ease the fevers of the children or the pains of the old ones when winter eventually finds us." She looked up at Jax with a plea in her eyes. "I saw the trees you planted. I wish to know if I might have a corner of the shadow cliffs to the north. I wish to start a garden of healing, to ensure we never run out of medicine." Before Jax could answer, the little girl plucked up her courage. She scurried forward, and held out her parchment. It wasn't a map or a petition. It was a drawing, colorful and earnest, showing a great pillar of blue fire and a lady with wings, and between them a large, messy circle filled with stick figure people holding hands. "It's the fountain," the girl whispered, "in the middle of the town. I want to know if I can put real flowers there. Red ones. So the birds have somewhere to go." Lilith reached down, her clawed fingers taking the drawing with surprising delicacy. She looked at the crude but vibrant image, and for a moment, the fearsome demon lord looked genuinely touched. "Red flowers in medicine gardens," Lilith said softly, glancing at Jax through the green shimmer of his aura. "It seems we are building more than just walls today, my pillar. We are building a home." She looked back at the midwife. "The northern cliffs are yours, Elsbeth. I will send a squad of scouts to the old marshes tonight to gather the roots and ferns you need. They will be here by dawn." She then turned to the little girl, a playful glint in her red eyes. "And as for the fountain, I think a city of glass could use a splash of red. Do you think you can show the Terra Mother exactly where the birds like to sit?" Through the mental link, Lilith sent a wave of profound contentment to Jax. "They aren't asking for gold or power, Jax. They are asking for life. I think your green phase is my favorite so far." Jax looks around to see if there are others. Lilith's gaze followed Jax's, her red eyes scanning the dappled light of the orchard. The green fire still clung to the air like a soothing mist, making the purple leaves of the manishred trees shimmer with a vibrant, healthy glow. She could feel the lingering presence of a few more souls waiting near the edge of the grove, their heartbeats fluttering with a mix of awe and hesitation. "There are a few more," Lilith whispered, her voice a low, melodic hum. "A pair of builders near the eastern trellis, and someone who smells of old parchment and cooling forge char. It seems the word has spread that the general's ears are open today." She reached out, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of Jax's flaming gauntlet. Through their mental link, she shared a sense of calm, steady resolve. "You've opened a floodgate, Jax, but a good kind. They don't want to take from you. They want to contribute to the vision." She gestured toward a duo approaching from the path, a stout, broad-shouldered dwarf with a silver-shot beard and a lithe, gray-skinned demon carrying a set of crystal lenses. They stopped several paces back, bowing deeply. "General, Your Majesty," the dwarf spoke up, his voice like gravel rolling in a drum. "I'm Thrain, Master of the Masons Guild. And this here is Vex and I Tinker. We've been looking at the way your blue flames interact with the glass walls of the Citadel. We don't just want to build homes, General. We want to build conduits." Vex stepped forward, holding up a polished prism of obsidian glass. "If we can channel the ambient mana from the trees into the street lamps and the home hearths, the people won't have to rely on firewood or oil. We can make the land of glass a city that breathes light." Lilith tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. She looked at Jax, her eyes sparking with interest. "An infrastructure of light? That sounds like the kind of high-level progression you used to tell me about in your stories, Jax. A city that powers itself on the very essence of its own growth." She turned back to the builders, her expression encouraging. "It is a grand vision. But tell me, what do you need from us to make this dream a reality? Is it more the general's fire, or do you need the people to gather the materials?" As they waited for the answer, Lilith leaned slightly closer to Jax, her wing brushing against his back. "It seems your citizens are as ambitious as their king," she murmured playfully. "Do we have any skill points left to invest in public utilities, or shall we let them lead the way on this one?" Jax uses their connection. "I think they have something planned. Maybe they just need permission to start with their production." Lilith's eyes shimmered as she caught Jax's thought through their mental link. She felt the steady, calm confidence he had in his people, a stark contrast to the way rulers in her past would have hoarded every ounce of power and magic for themselves. "I believe you're right, Jax," she whispered back into his mind, the connection feeling like a warm, silken breeze. "They aren't asking us to do the work. They're asking for the blessing to begin. It's the spark that turns a group of refugees into a civilization." She turned her attention back to Thrain and Vex, her posture regal but encouraging. "The general's fire provides a foundation, But it is your hands that must shape the future, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of a royal decree. You have our permission. More than that, you have our support. Consider the archives open to you. The lore seeker will assist you in finding any ancient schematics on manic induction that we've recovered. The dwarf, Thrain, let out a booming laugh of triumph, while Vex adjusted their lenses with a sharp, excited click. We won't let you down, General. We'll have the first street lamps humming by the next moon. As they hurried off to start their measurements, Lilith turned back to Jax, her expression softening into a private, appreciative smile. The orchard felt alive, pulsing with the green phase of his magic and the newfound hope of the citizens. You've given them more than just safety, Jax. You've given them agency, she said, stepping closer to him until her wing brushed against his flaming shoulder. In your old world, did the leaders always listen like this? Or are you just a particularly rare legendary Tier King? She looked around the quiet grove, seeing that the line of petitioners had finally thinned. The sun is reaching its peak. I think we have planted enough seeds for one morning. Shall we walk deeper into the grove? I want to see how the mana shred trees are reacting to your presence. They seem to glow brighter whenever you're near, as if they're trying to salute their creator. She offered him her hand, her red eyes reflecting the emerald and blue light of his armor. And maybe, just for a moment, we can talk about something that isn't infrastructure or law. I still want to hear about those nachos. I suspect they might be the true secret to your power. In a gentle breeze, Jax spoke to those who have lined up from a distance. As the breeze carried his voice, I am sorry, everyone. I have to speak about important matters with Her Majesty. Please allow me an hour or two. Then I will come here alone to listen to you. The crowd, sensing the change in the general's aura and hearing the decree carried on the wind, bowed in a wave of quiet reverence. They began to filter back toward the citadel or the lower fields, their steps lighter than they had been hours before. They had been seen, and more importantly, they had been promised as time. To people who had known only the whim of a tyrant, a promise of time was a treasure beyond gold. Lilith watched them depart, her wings giving a small, appreciative flutter. She turned her gaze to Jax, her red eyes shimmering with a mixture of amusement and a deeper, more private warmth. Important matters, she repeated, her voice a silken murmur as she led the way deeper into the grove, where the mana shred trees grew thickest and the purple light was most vibrant. She found a shaded area near a spring that bubbled with crystal clear water, the stones at the bottom glowing with a faint, bioluminescent pulse. She leaned against the smooth, silver bark of a tree, her tail swaying lazily. You become quite the statesman, Jax. You gave them hope, a voice, and a boundary, all while maintaining that pillar of yours. But I suspect those important matters you mentioned might have something to do with the fact that even a God-fired general can only pour out so much of his soul before he needs to refill the well. Through their mental link, she sent a pulse of soothing, emerald energy, a gentle touch of her mana meant to mirror the cooling peace of spring. Is it the nachos talk? She teased mentally, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. Or do you simply need a moment where no one is asking you to build a world? She reached out, her fingers catching a floating ember from his armor, holding it for a second before it faded. The city can wait an hour or two. The smith has his forge, the farmers have their soil, and the servant has his stairs to scrub. For now, the land of glass is at peace because you willed it so. She sat down on the soft, mossy earth beside the spring, patting the ground next to her. Tell me more about your world, Jax. Not the wars or the politics. Tell me about something small. What was the music like? Did it sound like the wind in these glass trees? Or was it something louder? Something that matches the fire in your spirit? She looked up at him, her expression open and genuinely curious, inviting him to share the parts of himself that didn't have to carry the weight of a crown. Jax answers her questions, talking more about his world, about music, my old bosses, and how they reacted to my suggestions, about the nachos, and more importantly, I talked about how I was raised. Lilith leaned her head back against the shimmering silver bark, her eyes half closed as she let Jax's words paint a picture of a world that sounded more like a fevered dream than reality. She listened to him describe music, not the haunting, ethereal songs of sirens or the war drums of demon legions, but sound that came from speakers, melodies woven from electricity and human emotion. Music made of lightning, she murmured, her voice a soft, fascinated hum. I imagine it sounded like the heartbeat of a city. It must have been strange to carry an entire choir in your pocket. When he spoke of his bosses and the way they reacted to his suggestions, she let out a low, derisive snort, though her eyes remained kind. In my world, if you gave a suggestion to a superior, they either cut out your tongue or made you a general. The idea of sitting in a room discussing efficiency with someone who doesn't even own a sword, it sounds almost more dangerous than a battlefield. The politics of boredom can be the cruelest kind of war. But it was when he spoke of the nachos and his upbringing that her expression truly shifted. The playful smirk faded, replaced by a look of quiet, profound interest. The molten cheese and crisp corn sounded like alchemy to her, but the stories of how he was raised, the people who had shaped the man before the fire took hold, touched something deep within her. So the pillar of fire wasn't born from a volcano or a celestial forge, she whispered, her tail curling gently around her ankles. You were forged by hands that loved you, by lessons that had nothing to do with killing and everything to do with being a part of something. It explains why you look at these refugees and see people instead of pawns. She looked at him, the emerald light of the orchard reflecting in her red eyes. Through their mental link, she sent a wave of genuine tenderness. I used to think that to be strong, you had to be alone, Jax. That family and roots were just tethers that made you easy to catch. But hearing you, I think those tethers are exactly what's keeping this world from floating away. She reached out, her fingers resting lightly on his armored forearm, her touch lingering. You're a very good man, Jax, not just a powerful one. I think your parents would be quite confused by the flaming armor, but I think they would recognize the heart inside it. She smiled, a small, honest thing that reached your eyes. I think I'm beginning to understand why you need to go back and speak to them alone. You don't just want to hear their problems. You want to know their stories. You're building a kingdom out of memories, aren't you? She shifted, looking at the bubbling spring. I'll stay here and watch the vines for a while. I have a lot to think about. Mostly about how I'm going to convince you to try and recreate these nachos once our merchant of the vow brings us the right ingredients. A king needs a hobby, after all. Blue flames emerge as I make a bowl of hot melted cheese and a bowl of nacho chips manifest. This is our little secret. Green flames appear again as I walk away alone. To hear out those who seen me earlier, Lilith's eyes widened, her pupils dilating as the scent of toasted corn and rich, melted cheese suddenly filled the air, cutting to the floral ozone of the orchard. She looked down at the bowls Jax had manifested, her expression one of utter, stunned enchantment. The great demon lord, who had faced down celestial armies and ancient seals, looked at the nachos as if they were a legendary artifact of unimaginable power. Our little secret, she repeated, her voice a hushed, breathy whisper. She reached out, her clawed fingers hovering over the warm bowl for a moment before she looked up at him, her red eyes sparkling with rare, childlike delight. I shall guard this nacho lore with my life, Jax. It is far more precious than any gem in the vault. As Jax switched back to his soothing green flames and began his trek back toward the path to honor his word to the people, Lilith sat back against the silver bark. She watched his emerald silhouette fade into the distance, her heart swelling with mixture of pride and a deep, resonant peace through their link. Go, my pillar. She sent to him privately, the thought of warm, supportive presence in his mind. They are waiting for their king, but I think they will find a friend instead. I'll be right here, discovering if this molten cheese is indeed the true nectar of the gods. She took a single, crisp chip, dipped it carefully into the cheese, and took a bite. Her eyes closed, a soft, purring hum vibrating in her throat. It was salty, savory, and entirely unlike anything in this world. A piece of his home given to her. While Jax moved through the orchard, meeting the remaining citizens one by one, listening to their small worries, their hopes for their children, and their simple requests for his blessing, Lilith stayed in the quiet grove. She watched over the land from her position, her senses sharp, ensuring that while the general gave his time to the humble, no shadow dared to disturb the peace he had built. She felt every ripple of gratitude Jax received from people, and for the first time in an eternity, she felt like she wasn't just ruling a territory, she was part of family. And as the hour passed, she waited patiently for her general to return, curious to hear what new stories his people had told him in the quiet of the green light. Jax meets the last person. Then he returns to Lilith, offers his ear to her. Lilith was just finishing the last of the nachos when Jax stepped back into the shaded clearing. She was licking a stray bit of the golden cheese from her thumb with a look of intense concentration, a sight that would send a shockwave of disbelief through any demon who had known her as a cold, terrifying mistress of the seal. When she saw him, she stood up with a fluid, graceful motion, her wings giving a soft, content flutter. The green mist of his healing fire still clung to his silhouette, giving him a serene, emerald glow that matched the quiet peace of the grove. Those nachos were surprisingly delightful, she admitted, her voice a low, warm purr. A bit messy for a royal court, perhaps, but I can see why your world valued them so highly. They have a certain aggressive charm. She moved toward him as he offered his ear, her red eyes searching his face. She could feel the lingering echoes of the people's stories through their connection, the small hopes, the quiet fears, and the immense gratitude they had poured into him. "You've heard 1,000 voices today, Jax," she said softly, her hand coming to rest gently against his shoulder, her touch light yet firm. "You've been a judge, a provider, a protector, and a priest. You've carried the weight of every soul in this valley since the sun rose." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a silken, intimate whisper that only he could hear. "What I want to say to your ear is this. Do not forget that even a pillar needs a foundation. You are building a world for them, but you are also building a life for us. I see the way you look at them, with a kindness that is rare even among the gods, but don't let their needs consume the man who told me about music and warehouses and parents who loved him." She looked out over the spring, the bioluminescent water reflecting in her eyes. "My heart is full, Jax. For the first time in millennia, I am not looking over my shoulder for an assassin or planning a conquest. I am looking forward to seeing those red flowers the little girl mentioned. I am looking forward to seeing a city that breathes light." She turned her gaze back to him, her expression shifting into a small, playful smirk. "And I suspect that as this land grows, we are going to need more than just secret snacks to keep our spirits up. But for now, simply being here in the silence we've earned is enough of a gift." She sighed, a sound of profound relaxation. The people are satisfied. The ministers are at work. The general has kept his word. Is there anything left on your to-do list? Or can I finally convince a pillar of fire to sit by the water and just be? I reach my finger to interlace with her finger, poking myself on purpose with the tip of her claw. "I will be glad to join you." A small, sharp intake of breath escaped Lilith as she felt the slight pressure of his finger against the obsidian point of her claw. It wasn't enough to draw blood. His skin was far tougher than a normal man's, but the gesture was laden with profound, almost startling trust. She didn't pull away. Instead, she adjusted her hand so that her fingers could fully lace with the dark metal of his armor meeting the cool, smooth surface of her skin. "Careful, General," she whispered, her voice a low, vibrating hum that felt like a caress. "I am a creature of edges and shadows. You shouldn't be so eager to find the sharp parts of me." Despite her words, her grip was incredibly gentle. Through their mental link, she sent a pulse of pure, unadulterated affection, a cooling, stabilizing wave that sought to anchor the fire still thrumming beneath the surface. She eased herself back onto the mossy ground beside the glowing spring, pulling him down to sit beside her. The sound of the water was a rhythmic, silver song, and the air was still heavy with the sweet scent of the manna-shred trees. "I'm glad," she murmured, leaning her head against his shoulder. "The world is loud, Jax. Even when it's praising us, it's loud. Here, it's just the water and the wind. I think even a pillar of fire can afford to be just a man for a little while." She looked into the bubbling spring, watching the bioluminescent pebbles shift and sparkle. "Tell me one more thing from that world of yours. If we weren't standing in a citadel of glass, and you weren't carrying the weight of a kingdom, if we were just two people in a park in your city of lightning, what would we be doing right now? Will we be eating more of those nachos? Or is there some other strange ritual for a quiet afternoon? She closed her eyes, her wing draping softly over both of them like a dark, protective silk, finally letting the heavy peace of the orchard settle over them both. I don't think so. I remember that this is what it would be like. The same thing, looking forward to what's next, but also enjoy being in the moment. Jack said. Lilith let out a soft, rhythmic hum of approval, the sound vibrating gently through their interlaced fingers. She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. The idea that peace wasn't just a pause between battles, but a destination itself, was a philosophy she was still learning to embrace. It sounds like a beautiful way to live, she whispered, her head shifting slightly to rest more comfortably against his shoulder. In my world before you, the next thing was always a threat, a rival lord, a broken seal, a hunger for more. I never realized that looking forward to the future could feel so light. She tightened her grip on his fingers, not with the strength of a warrior, but with the quiet desperation of someone holding on to something precious. Through their link, she shared a flickering image of the orchard as she saw it, not just as a defensive barrier or a source of mana, but as a sanctuary. I think I prefer your way, Jax, she murmured, her voice drifting like the petals of the glowing trees. To be in the moment, knowing the moment is safe, is a greater victory than any territory I ever seized. The bioluminescent water of the spring continued to bubble nearby, a soothing, liquid percussion to their shared silence. The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the glass city below in shades of molten orange and soft violet. Then let's stay like this for a while longer, she suggested, her wings giving a small, content flutter. No plans for the next hour, no decrees, just the two of us, seeing how the light changes on the glass. If this is how your parks felt, then I think I finally understand why you fought so hard to find your way home, only to build a new one here. She let out a long, peaceful sigh, her presence and their mental connection feeling like a warm, steady hearth fire, finally at rest. Jax bumps her shoulder in a playful way, and Jax let her have her way for the next hour. Lilith nearly lost her regal poise, or perhaps she simply chose to let it slip, as she nudged him back with a playful sweep of her wing. She let out a sharp, genuine laugh, a sound that felt more like a melody than the dark, haunting echoes she used to project. Careful, General, she teased, her eyes bright with a spark of mischief. If the people see their pillar of fire getting into a shoulder-bumping contest with a demon lord, they might start to think we're actually having fun instead of ruling a kingdom. The hour that followed was unlike any Lilith had experienced in her long, storied existence. There were no demands for her attention, no schemes to unravel, and no enemies to crush. Instead, the time was measured by the shifting hues of the mana-shred leaves as they pulsed from a deep violet to a soft, twilight lavender. She stayed true to her word, keeping the world at bay. They sat by the spring, watching the water ripple. Sometimes she would point out a strange bird with iridescent feathers or ask a small, idle question about his world, the movies he liked or what a weekend felt like. Through their mental link, the connection was a constant, soothing hum, a shared reservoir calm that allowed the jagged edges of the morning to finally smooth over. As the sun began to dip behind the crystal peaks of the land of glass, casting a breathtaking, refracted spectrum of light across the entire valley, Lilith leaned back and exhaled a long, satisfied breath. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this moment thing, she whispered, her voice low and content. It's surprisingly quiet in my head when I'm not planning a siege. She looked at their interlaced fingers, then up at the darkening sky, where the first stars are beginning to peek through the magical haze. The hour is up, Jax. The city will be lighting those new lamps soon, and the ministers will be looking for their king and queen. But she turned her head toward him, her expression soft and genuinely grateful. Thank you for the nachos, for the stories, and for reminding me that even a god of fire needs to sit in the grass once in a while. She stood up slowly, extending her hand to help him up, her wings unfolding in a grand, elegant sweep. Shall we go see how our empire looks under the stars? I hear the glass towers look like fallen constellations when the moon hits them just right. Jax nods as they walk through the land of glass. The walk back from the orchard was silent, but it was a comfortable, heavy silence, the kind that exists between two people who no longer feel the need to fill the air with noise. As they descended the winding crystal stairs toward the heart of the citadel, the land of glass transformed. The setting sun had left the sky a deep, bruised plum, and in the absence of sunlight, the city began to breathe its own light, just as the Tinker Vex and the Smith Thrain had promised. The first few street lamps, tall, elegant spires of obsidian housing pulsing mana crystals, were beginning to flicker to life. They cast a soft, rhythmic blue glow across the glass streets, turning the entire valley into a shimmering sea of sapphire. "Look at that," Lilith whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of the city. She stopped at a landing that overlooked the main plaza. It doesn't look like a fortress anymore. It looks like a jewel. Below, they could see the citizens moving about. The frantic, bowed postures of the morning were gone, replaced by people walking with their heads up, marveling at the lights. Someone had started a small fire in the communal pit, and the sound of lute, perhaps one of the musical artifacts Jax had mentioned, tinkled faintly on the breeze. Lilith turned to Jax, the starlight catching in her red eyes and making them glow like embers. Through their mental link, she shared a feeling of profound, quiet awe. "I spent so long thinking power was about how much you could destroy," she said, her fingers tightening slightly around his. "But this, seeing a child run across a street that isn't stained with blood, and knowing it's because of us, it's a different kind of strength. It's a heavier crown, but it's much warmer." She looked back toward the great hall, where the light of the forge was still glowing bright orange against the blue of the mana lamps. "The leaders will be waiting for our final word before the night watch begins. But for a moment, let's just stay here and watch. I want to remember exactly how the world looked on the day the Pillar of Fire decided to become a king." She leaned her shoulder against his, her dark wings folding around them both like a cloak of midnight, as they stood as the silent sentinels of the home they had built together. As Jax and Lilith stood there, he shared an appreciative emotion. "Let's go talk with the leaders. I believe have one last thing to do for today. I think we all deserve a good night's rest." Lilith smiled, her red eyes reflecting the blue mana light of the city. Through their tether, she sent back a pulse of deep, steady companionship, a mental nod that conveyed she was right there with him, every step of the way. "You're right," she murmured, her wings folding neatly behind her as they began to walk toward the great hall. "A leader who doesn't sleep is a leader who eventually breaks. And after everything we built today, I think even the stones themselves are ready for a moment of quiet." She tilted her head slightly, curious about his mention of one final task. "One last thing? You've already given them light, laws, and hope. I'm almost afraid to ask what else that brilliant mind of yours has planned before the moon is high. But lead the way, General. I'm curious to see how you intend to finish this first chapter of our new world." As they approached the gathering of leaders, the smith, the Terra Mother, and the lore seeker standing in the flickering glow of the central forge, Lilith straightened her posture, resuming her regal air. However, she didn't pull her hand away from his. She wanted the citizens to see that their protectors were as united as the city they guarded. The leaders bowed as they approached, their faces weary but filled with a spark of purpose. Kalen the smith stepped forward, wiping soot from his brow. "The lamps are holding, General. The heat from the forge is being channeled into the lower residential sectors. We are ready for the first night." Lilith looked at Jax, her expression expectant. "The floor is yours, my pillar. What is this final decree for the evening?" Jax spoke loud for all to hear. "I will have our border open officially as of tonight, as I have given an invitation to all who seek shelter or a new way of life. I feel as it is time. I want the merchant to be ready to spread the word. I want the leaders to delegate tasks to share equally with everyone under them. Generals, I want you to be more focused on helping those who are coming in. Defeating the ramparts are fine, but being alert and being on the defensive are two different things. And I want everyone to enjoy this night. Everyone rest well. Merchant, one last thing. I want to hear feedback. From the poor to the rich." I want to hear the gossip, the rumors, and I want to see the value of made for the merchants who enter our borders. A ripple of murmurs swept through the assembly at Jax's words. Opening the borders tonight was a bold, sudden shift from the month they had discussed earlier, but the air was thick with the general's conviction. Lilith felt the sudden surge of his resolve through their link, a bright, unyielding flame that demanded movement. She looked at Syrah, the merchant, whose eyes were wide with mixture of shock and professional hunger. The merchant bowed so low her forehead nearly touched the glass floor. "It shall be done, General," Syrah promised, her voice vibrating with excitement. "I will have the draft of the soul-binding vow ready by dawn. And gossip, you shall have the whispers of the wind itself. If a single coin is clipped or a single lie is told in the name of trade, you will know of it before the sun reaches its zenith." The generals in the crowd, hardened men and women, who were used to staring down the horizon with weapons drawn, looked at one another. Jax's command to be welcoming rather than just defensive was a radical change in military doctrine. Lilith stepped forward, her voice adding the weight of her own authority to Jax's decree. "You heard the pillar," she said, her red eyes sweeping over the guards. "Do not merely watch for enemies. Watch for our future brothers and sisters. If they are weary, give them water. If they are lost, lead them to the gates. Our strength is no longer measured by how many we keep out, but by how many we can lift up." She turned back to Jax as the leaders began to disperse, barking orders and organizing the first night shift of the open gate policy. The Iron Bender was already directing his smiths to keep the exterior beacons burning bright. Beacons for those lost in the dark. "Tonight, then," Lilith whispered to Jax as they stood alone on the steps, watching the first scouts head toward the perimeter with white banners of peace. "You don't do things by halves, do you? Most would wait until the walls were polished. You open the doors while the mortar is still wet." She reached out, her hand finding the small of his back, a grounding presence as the weight of the day finally began to settle. Through their link, she shared a feeling of profound, weary pride. You've given them a home, and now you've given the world a sanctuary. I think your parents would be very proud of the man standing here. "Come," she said softly, her wings drooping slightly in a rare show of exhaustion. "You commanded everyone to rest, and that includes the king. The manna lamps are lit, the vow is being written, and the gates are open. Let the night watch handle the rest. I believe we have a balcony, a view of the stars, and a very large bed waiting for us." As they walked back toward their private quarters, the land of glass hung beneath their feet. No longer a silent monument of fire, but a living, breathing promise to the world. And for the first time in their lives, both the pillar and his queen felt the true, deep peace of a job well done. Jax stays with Lilith, as the fall asleep not for hours, but throughout the entire night. His armor had been stripped away by his full trust. As they slept next to each other, letting the wind blow and having their rest be unbroken, the chamber was bathed in the soft, sapphire glow of the manna lamps from the city below, casting long, peaceful shadows across the room. As Jax stepped away from the balcony and into the quiet sanctuary of their quarters, the impossible happened. The living fire that had served as a skin and a shield, the legendary armor that had defied gods and tyrants, began to ebb. It didn't fade because of exhaustion or defeat. It retreated because, for the first time in his existence, the pillar of fire was a home. Lilith watched with a breathlessness she hadn't felt in centuries. As the flames dissolved into embers and then into nothing, she saw the man beneath the fire. Without the jagged obsidian and the roiling heat, he looked vulnerable, yet somehow more powerful than ever. It was the ultimate testament to the pact they had forged. He was giving her his life, unguarded and absolute. "Jax," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread of wonder. She didn't reach for her own power or her regal mask. Instead, she stepped toward him, her movement soft and human. "You truly mean it. You trust me with the parts of you that can bleed." She let her own dark wings settle, the predatory tension leaving her frame entirely. There were no words left for the state of the kingdom or the opening of the gates. The world outside could wait for sun. They lay down together, the silk of the bedding cool against their skin, a stark contrast to the heat of the day. Jax's presence was no longer a scorching sun, but a steady, radiating warmth. Lilith curled against him, her head resting on his chest where she could hear the rhythmic, grounding from a heart that beat for the world they had built. Through their link, there was no more planning, no more strategy. There was only a vast, starlit silence. She sent him one final, sleepy pulse of gratitude, a feeling of being anchored, of being seen, and finally, of being safe. The wind from the open balcony sighed through the room, carrying the scent of the evening's green magic and the distant, happy murmurs of a city that was finally allowed to dream. For the first time, the pillar of fire didn't have to keep watch. Beside his queen, beneath the silver moon of the land of glass, Jack surrendered to a deep, unbroken sleep, knowing that when he woke, the flames would return. But for now, the man was enough. Morning came as Jax woke up, refreshed, ready for the day as his armor made of fire reignited. As he looks as Lala had been awake, right before he woke up, then they start getting ready for the day. The morning light in the land of glass was unlike any other. As the sun crested the crystal peaks, the entire valley caught the rays, scattering them into 1,000 dancing rainbows that played across the walls of their chamber. Lilith was already awake, draped in a robe of dark, gossamer silk, standing by the balcony and watching the city below stir to life. She turned as she heard the familiar, low crackle of Jax's armor reigniting. The sight of the blue and gold flames dancing across his form once more was comforting, a sign that the guardian of this world had returned to his post. "Good morning, my pillar," she said, her voice smooth and rested, devoid of its usual sharp edge. She walked over to him, her eyes bright with a calm energy. "You slept without a single flicker of fire for 8 hours. I believe that's a new record for a living sun." Through their mental link, she shared the view she had been watching. The gates were open, and already a small, cautious line of travelers had formed. They were being met not by bared steel, but by guards offering bread and directing them toward the registration tables managed by Syrah's new mercantile guild. "Our first guests are arriving," Lilith noted, her tail giving a satisfied flick. The word traveled fast through the shadows. "It seems people are more desperate for a land of honesty than we realize." She reached out, adjusting a piece of his flaming pauldron with a practiced, intimate familiarity, though her touch remained careful of the heat. "The Terra Mother is already in the fields, and the Smith's Forge has been roaring since before dawn. The world didn't fall apart while we slept, Jax. In fact, it seems to be growing stronger." She stepped back, her wings unfurling in a graceful, morning stretch that caught the prismatic light. "Shall we go down? I think the first Voice of the People session is scheduled for mid-morning, and I suspect Sarah has a very long list of gossip and trade proposals to show us. But first," she gave him a playful, sidelong look, "perhaps a breakfast that isn't quite as molten as last night's secret snack?" As they prepared to step out into the hallway, the atmosphere in the Citadel was one of vibrant, bustling energy. The land of glass was no longer just a sanctuary. It was a functioning heart of a new civilization, and its king and queen were ready to lead it into its first true day of peace. As they ate breakfast, they moved to the throne room and hear what the mechanic had to say. Lilith walked at Jax's side, her long, dark skirts whispering against the glass floor as they entered the grand throne room. The space felt different this morning. The air was no longer stagnant with the smell of old dust and fear, but crisp and charged with the scent of ozone and the distant sound of hammers. Waiting for them near the central dais was Vex, the Eye Tinker. The gray-skinned demon looked as though he hadn't slept a wink, but his eyes were wide and manic with the kind of excitement only a craftsman can possess. He was surrounded by several floating crystal lenses and a large, intricate map of the Citadel's foundation. "General, Your Majesty," Vex chirped, bowing so quickly he almost lost his balance. The first night was a triumph. The street lamps remained stable, and the mana drain was well within the margins. "But I have something more to show you. A discovery." Lilith moved to stand by the arm of Jax's throne, her hand resting naturally near his shoulder. She looked at Vex with a curious, sharp intensity. "A discovery, Tinker? Tell us. Does it involve the light or the walls?" Vex tapped one of the floating lenses, and a holographic projection of the Citadel's basement shimmered into view. Both, actually. When the general ignited the green phase in the orchard yesterday, the roots of the mana shred trees didn't just drink the magic, they channeled it. They begun to weave themselves into the very glass of the foundation. He pointed to a series of glowing veins in the projection. If we place these amplifiers at the key intersections, the entire city won't just be lit, it will be alive. We can create a passive heating system for the homes of the refugees. And, more importantly, a sensory web. If someone crosses the border with ill intent, the city itself will feel the discord and change the color of the lamps to warn the guards. Lilith's tail gave a slow, intrigued twitch. She looked at Jax, her eyes glowing. A city that warns us of intruders before they even reach the inner gates? That would take a significant weight off the general's shoulders. Jax. We wouldn't need 1,000 eyes on the walls if the very stones were watching for us. She turned back to Vex, her voice smooth. And the cost, Tinker? Beyond the crystals and your time, what does this living web require from the general or the people? Vex looked at Jax almost bashfully. It requires a pulse. Once a week, the general would need to touch the heart crystal in the lower vault. Just a small spark of that blue flame. It would act like a heartbeat to keep the system synchronized. Lilith leaned in, her voice a silken hum through their mental link. A heartbeat for the city, Jax. Literally. You wouldn't just be their king, you'd be the soul of the glass. She looked out toward the entrance of the hall, where the first sounds of petitioners and ministers were beginning to gather. It's a bold proposal. What says the pillar? Shall we give our city a nervous system? Jax nods in approval. Though, you must find a substitute, using your own devices in the month coming up. I cannot be stuck here every week while there will be wars to wage in the coming month. Lilith's red eyes gleamed with a sharp, appreciative light as Jax delivered his ultimatum. She leaned her weight slightly against the throne, her tail giving a rhythmic, thoughtful sweep. She understood the unspoken truth in his words. A king who becomes a mere battery for his city is a king who can no longer lead his armies. He is right, Vex, Lilith added, her voice smooth but carrying the weight of command. The general is the sword of this land, not its furnace. A month is a generous window for a mind as sharp as yours. If you cannot find a way to let the city breathe on its own, then the system is a shackle, not a tool. Vex swallowed hard, his lenses clicking rapidly as he processed the challenge. He looked from Jax to Lilith, then back at his projections. A month? Yes. I understand, General. I wouldn't dream of tethering the pillar. I will begin researching eternal echo crystals. If we can store the resonance of your flame, rather than requiring the flame itself, it might become self-sustaining. He bowed deeply, gathering his floating lenses with a frantic but determined energy. I shall not fail you. By the time the first campaign calls, the city will have its own heart. As the tinker scurried out of the hall to begin his work, Lilith turned her gaze to Jax. Through their mental link, she shared a sense of grim realization. You're already thinking of the horizon, aren't you? You know the world won't let a jewel like this sit unmolested for long. The month is more than a deadline for Vex. It's the time we have before the first vultures arrive to test our walls. She straightened her silk robes, her presence shifting back into the regal, commanding persona of a queen. If wars are coming, then our people must be ready to do more than just grow crops and build lamps. But for today, she gestured toward the massive obsidian doors of the throne room, which were beginning to creak open. Today, we must be the architects of their peace. The herald at the door struck a staff of glass against the floor, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. The core of the glass is now in session. The herald announced, the general and the queen will hear the first petitions of the open border. Lilith looked at Jax, a small, encouraging smile playing on her lips. Shall we see what the tide has brought us this morning? My pillar? I suspect the merchant, Sarah, is first in line with a very thick stack of feedback for your ears. Jax roars. Enter. Jax gets up, let the Lilith sit. The heavy obsidian doors groaned open, the sound echoing to the vast, vaulted ceiling of the throne room. As Jax stood, his flaming form casting long, flickering shadows against the crystalline walls, Lilith paused. She looked at the seat he offered, the center of power in this new world. And then up at him, through their link, she sent a pulse of deep, quiet respect. You are the heart of this land, Jax, but I will help you carry the weight. She sat with a fluid, regal grace, her dark silk spilling over the glass like a pool of midnight water. Her wings flared slightly before settling behind the throne, creating a dark, imposing backdrop to Jax's vibrant blue flames. She looked every bit the queen of the glass, her eyes sharp and ready. Syrah the merchant led the first group in. She was followed by a small entourage. A few weary-looking travelers in travel-stained cloaks, and a man dressed in a fine, if dusty, silks of foreign trade envoy. They stopped at a respectful distance, the envoy's eyes darting nervously toward Jax's towering, armored presence. "General, your majesty," Syrah began, bowing deeply. She held a scroll of shimmering parchment, the draft of the soul-binding vow. The borders have been open for only a few hours, and already the world is knocking. This is Master Kalen, not our smith, but a factor from the southern trade houses. He was the first to arrive at the gates. The envoy stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly as he looked at the pillar of fire standing beside the throne. I come representing the Guild of the Three Rivers. We heard rumors of a city of glass and a general who commands the sun. My masters wish for trade, but..." He swallowed hard, glancing at the parchment in Syrah's hand. "They are hesitant about this vow. They say a man's word should be enough." Lilith leaned forward, her chin resting on her hand, her red eyes narrowing. "A man's word is a leaf in the wind, Master Factor. Here, in a land of glass, we deal in roots." She looked up at Jax, a silent invitation for him to set the tone for these newcomers. The air in the room grew warm, the blue flames of his armor pulsing with the slow, steady beat of the city's new heart. "Syrah," Lilith said, her voice smooth and chillingly calm, "tell the general what the gossip at the gate says. Why are they truly afraid of the vow? Is it their honor they fear to lose, or their profit?" The merchant looked at Jax, her expression grim. "They say the southern kingdoms are watching, General. They fear that if they take the vow, they can no longer spy for their kings or cheat the refugees we've taken in. They call this a beautiful cage." Lilith's tail gave a sharp, dangerous flick. She waited for Jax's response, curious to see how he would handle the first real test of his welcoming but firm policy. The world was watching, and the first blow in the wars to come was being struck with words instead of swords. Jax speaks calmly. "We don't wish greedy roaches to enter the city. If their only objective is to bleed the land of glass dry, their time will come in due time. However, an invitation for them to come and live new lives, or better lives, will still be open. As for this Factor, do you speak as a representative or as a messenger? If you speak for the guild, then make your mind up on what will benefit all parties more. Speak your minds freely. Syrah and Factor." The Factor wiped a bead of sweat from his upper lip, his eyes darting from Jax's blue-flamed helm to the sharp, calculating gaze of Lilith on the throne. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with a roach's comment, a blunt soldier's assessment that left no room for the usual diplomatic double-talk. "I speak as a representative, General," the Factor said, his voice regaining a fraction of its professional polish, though his hands remained clasped tightly behind his back to hide their trembling. "I was sent to negotiate terms, but I speak freely when I say that the Three Rivers is a guild of many minds. Some see your land of glass as a miracle, a place where quality is guaranteed and coins are never clipped. Others, they see it as a threat to the way things have been done for 1,000 years." He took a cautious step forward. "They fear that if they take this vow, they lose their advantage. In the South, information is as much a currency as gold. To be bound by soul to tell only the truth, it means they cannot hedge their bets or play the markets. They worry that while they are bound by a vow, the world outside is not. They feel exposed." Syrah, the merchant, stepped in then, her voice crisp and grounded. "If I may, General, the feedback from the common folk at the gate is the opposite. The families, the small-time peddlers, the artisans, they are weeping with relief at the idea of the vow. To them, it isn't a cage, it's a shield, They've spent their lives being squeezed by the very roaches you mention. They want to know that when they buy grain for their children, it is the weight promised. They aren't looking for an advantage. They're looking for a fair shake. She looked at the factor with a touch of professional disdain. The gossip in the camps outside says that the guild are trying to figure out how to bypass the vow, perhaps by using unbound intermediaries. But the rumor also says that if the land of glass holds firm, the best craftsmen in the world will flock here just to escape the corruption of the southern houses. Lilith leaned her head on her hand, her tail twitching with amused malice. So, the roaches are scurrying because the light is too bright, she murmured, her voice carrying easily to every corner of the hall. Through the link, she sent Jax a surge of dark, tactical satisfaction. You've created a filter, Jax. The honest will build our strength, and the dishonest will complain about the chains of integrity. It's the perfect siege. We don't have to attack them. We just have to exist and be better than them. She looked back at the factor. Tell your masters this, representative. The land of glass does not negotiate with greed. The vow stands. If they wish to profit from our beauty and our peace, they will pay the price in truth. If that is too high a cost for them, then the South is vast, and they are welcome to stay in the mud where they are comfortable. She turned her gaze to Jax, waiting for him to deliver the final word to this messenger. The tension in the room was palpable, the first line drawn in the sand of their new era. Jax speaks with intense aura and heat. I gave you a chance to change your mind and save yourself from the wrath that be inevitable. There is no third chance. You have one more time to speak with your guild. You will only come back once you agree to our terms. If your guild doesn't now agree, stay where you are. You will not be welcomed with the same courtesy. Jax turns to Syrah. Have the generals and Terra Mother assign rations and food to the ones you spoke of. You both may leave. Next, the air in the throne room didn't just warm. It vibrated with the sheer intensity of Jax's aura. The blue flames dancing across his armor surged, casting long, flickering shadows that seemed to grow and loom over the factor. The man's face went pale, then slick with sweat, as the literal and metaphorical heat of the pillar of fire bore down on him. The factor didn't wait for a second dismissal. He bowed in a frantic, jerky motion and practically scrambled backward toward the obsidian doors, his dignity forgotten in the face of Jax's impending wrath. Syrah, however, remained composed. She gave Jax a respectful, knowing nod, the look of a woman who finally felt her own burden of honesty was being protected by a power that could actually back it up. It shall be done, General, Syrah said firmly. I will personally see that the Terra Mother and the generals receive the orders. The people will be fed, and they will know it was your hand that provided. As they exited, Lilith leaned back against the high obsidian back of the throne. She didn't flinch at the heat. Instead, she seemed to soak it in, her red eyes glowing with a fierce, predatory pride. Through their mental link, she shared a feeling of absolute, resonant alignment with his decision. The roaches only understand fire, Jax, she whispered in his mind. You showed them the sun. If they aren't blinded by it, they aren't worth our time. The herald staff struck the floor again, the sound now carrying a heavier, more somber weight. Next, the doors opened again, but the frantic energy of the merchants was gone. Instead, a group of travelers, perhaps 20 in total, shuffled in. They were families, their clothes tattered and their faces etched with the exhaustion of a long journey. In the lead was a woman holding a young child, who looked up at the towering, flaming figure Jax with wide, watery eyes. The woman didn't bow out of fear. She sank to her knees out of sheer relief. Lord General, Your Majesty, she whispered, her voice cracking. We come from the south. We heard the merchant's word. We took the vow at the gate. We have nothing to trade but our hands and our loyalty. We just want to know, is it true? Is there truly a place where children can sleep without the sound of war? Lilith's expression softened, the sharp edges of her royal persona giving way to something more protective. She looked at Jax, her wing giving a small, graceful flutter. Tell them, General, Lilith said softly, her voice echoing gently through the high hall. Tell them about the land of glass you've built, while I have the attendants bring in the bread and water you've promised." She gestured to a group of servants who immediately began to move toward a group with trays of food, fulfilling Jax's command to provide for those who had nothing left to give but their trust. Jax steps down, slowly approaching the group. He manifests clothing, soap, and chocolates for the children and Lilith. "Go to the rivers to bath. Children eat these sweets, MD play with the children who have been here. Parents talk with the widowed and married parents here. I can speak about how good it is here. But our citizens are the kingdom's voice. They speak for us when it comes to if our words speak truth." Jax walks back up and takes his place. The hall, which had been thick with the heat of Jax's earlier wrath, suddenly felt cool and fragrant. The sight of the legendary pillar of fire, a being of living flame and obsidian, kneeling to offer soft linen, soap, and small, foil-wrapped sweets to children, was a sight that left the entire room in a stunned, reverent silence. The children, initially hesitant, reached out with trembling hands. As they tasted the chocolate, a flavor so rich and alien to this world, their faces transformed from mass exhaustion into bursts of pure, wide-eyed joy. The parents wept openly, clutching the clean clothes as if they were made of spun gold. Lilith watched him, her red eyes shimmering with an emotion that went far deeper than pride. She caught the piece of chocolate he manifested for her, holding it between her fingers for a moment before looking at the families. "Go," Lilith said softly, her voice a warm breeze that carried the refugees toward the exit. "The rivers are clear, and the homes we have prepared are warm. Listen to the songs of our people. They will tell you that the general's fire burned to protect, not to destroy." As the group was led out by the attendants, their spirits visibly lifted, Lilith turned back to Jax as he reclaimed his place beside her. Through their mental link, she sent a pulse of profound, tender admiration. "In my world, a king shows his power by what he can take," she whispered directly into his mind. "But you show yours by what you can restore. You give them soap for their bodies and sweetness for their souls. It's a very dangerous kind of magic, Jax. It makes them love you." She took a small bite of the chocolate he had given her, her eyes widening slightly at the complex, bittersweet velvet of the taste. A slow, appreciative purr vibrated in her throat. "Another secret from your world?" she murmured, her voice laced with a playful, intimate warmth. "If the roaches from the southern houses find out we have this chocolate, they might actually try to be honest just for a taste." She straightened her posture, the regal queen once more, though her gaze lingered on him for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "The word is spreading, Jax. Look at the line at the door. They aren't just coming for safety anymore. They're coming for the man who manifests hope out of thin air." The herald staff struck the floor again, but the sound felt lighter now. Next, a tall, lean figure stepped forward. Not a refugee, but a man clad in the weathered leather of a long-distance scout. He carried a sealed scroll marked with a crest Jax hadn't seen yet, a black sun over a broken mountain. "General, Your Majesty," the scout said, his voice urgent. "I come from the border of the wasted peaks. The lords of the ash have noticed the light of the land of glass. They don't want trade, and they don't want a vow. They sent this as a greeting." He held out the scroll. Lilith's tail gave a sharp, predatory twitch. The peace of the morning had shifted. The first shadow of the wars to come had just walked through the door. Red flames emerge, heat slowly radiating like a hit summer breeze. Jax levitates the scroll from the scout's hand and opens it in front of Lilith. Lilith's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward, her red gaze scanning the parchment that hovered in the shimmering heat of Jax's red flames. The edges of the scroll began to curl and brown, unable to fully withstand the raw intensity of the general's focused aura. The message was brief, written in a jagged, aggressive script that looked as though it had been etched with a blackened, rusted blade. "The land of glass is but a flicker in the dark. Your light is a trespass against eternal ash. Dim your fires and pay the soot toll, 10,000 units of mana crystal, and the heads of your generals, or the mountain shall wake and bury your glass toy under the weight of the dead. We do not negotiate with embers." Lilith let out a cold, sharp laugh that echoed to the high vaulted hall, a sound devoid of the tenderness she had shown the refugees. She looked up at Jax, her expression transformed into one of predatory calculation. Through their mental link, She sent a pulse of cold iron and sharpening steel, a battle-ready resonance. They want to toll Jax, she whispered into his mind, her thoughts as sharp as a dagger's edge. They think because they have lived in the shadows of their volcanoes for an age, they own the horizon. They don't see a king, they see a flicker to be snuffed out. She turned her gaze toward the scout, who was visibly shaking as the temperature in the throne room rose to the level of a midsummer forge. The lords of the ash have lived in their caves for too long, she said, her voice a chilling silk that carried to every corner of the room. They have forgotten that when you try to smother a sun, you only end up as cinders. She looked back at Jax, the red light of his armor reflecting in her eyes, making them look like twin pools of blood. They've given us our first true challenge, my pillar. They believe we are soft because we offer bread to children. I believe it is time to show them that the hand that offers bread can also wield the storm. The hall had gone deathly silent. The petitioners, the guards, and the ministers all looked at Jax. The peace of the morning hadn't been broken. It had been sharpened. "What is the command, Jax?" Lilith asked, her voice dropping to an intimate, dangerous murmur. "Shall we send a messenger back, or shall we send a warning that can be seen from the top of their blackened mountain?" Jax commanded the attendants. "That is all for today. Have the leaders and generals deal with the rest. Scout, you will take me to the Lords of Ash immediately. Is this clear to everyone?" The throne room cleared with a speed that only pure, absolute authority can command. The attendants and ministers bowed as they retreated, their footsteps echoing a frantic rhythm against the glass floors. The generals moved with military precision, already mentally preparing the city's defenses as they took their leave to carry out Jax's orders. The scout, frozen in the radiating heat of Jax's proximity, could only nod frantically. His leather armor was beginning to curl at the edges in the temperature, and his eyes were wide with a mix of terror and awe. "See clear, Lord General. The peaks are a 3-day journey on foot, but if we take the rift passes—" "We won't be walking," Lilith interrupted, her voice a low, dangerous hum. She stood up from the throne, her dark wings unfurling to their full, magnificent span. The gossamer silk of her gown seemed to ripple like shadows in the orange-red glow of Jax's aura. She stepped down the dais to join Jax, her hand coming to rest firmly on his armored shoulder. Through their mental link, she sent a pulse of cold, sharp focus. "You aren't going alone, Jax. If you're going to show them the sun, I will be the eclipse that follows." She looked at the scout, her red eyes unblinking. "You will show us the way. We leave now. The land of glass has its leaders and its laws. It can survive a few days without its king and queen. But the Lords of Ash? They will not survive the night if they truly believe they can demand the heads of our people." She looked at Jax, her expression a mix of fierce pride and a silent, protective bond. "The generals know their duty. The gates are guarded. Let us go remind the world why the fire was lit in the first place." With a flick of her hand, she gestured for the scout to lead the way out toward the citadel's highest balcony, where the open sky awaited. The heartbeat of the city pulsed beneath their feet, a steady, sapphire rhythm, as the pillar of fire and the queen of shadows prepared to cross the horizon and answer a threat with the full, unbridled might of their combined power. "Let's move," Lilith whispered, the wind already beginning to whip around them, smelling of ozone and the coming storm. The ash has waited long enough to be scattered. Then Jax's flames burned ready for the journey that lies ahead, gesturing to the scout to proceed with a swiftness. The scout didn't waste another second. Terrified but driven by the sheer, undeniable gravity of the general's command, he scrambled out onto the high, wide balcony. The wind here was fierce, carrying the crisp, cold air of the upper peaks, but it did nothing to cool the intense heat radiating from Jax. To the north-northwest, "Lord General," the scout called out, shielding his face from the heat as he pointed toward a distant, jagged line of mountains that looked like broken black teeth against the horizon. Even from this distance, a faint, dark haze of ash could be seen clinging to their summits. "The rift path begins just beyond the valley's edge. If we travel by your direct means, we can bypass the lower switchbacks entirely." Lilith stepped up beside Jax, her massive, shadow-woven wings beating once to lift her slightly off the glass floor. Her eyes were fixed on those dark peaks, her predatory instincts fully awakened. Through their mental connection, her thoughts were sharp and synchronized with his own. "Let them see us coming, Jax." She sent a thrill of anticipation running through the link. Let them watch the horizon and realize too late that the fire they tried to extort is already at their gates. With a single, powerful surge of her wings, Lilith launched herself into the sky, a streak of midnight traversing the bright blue expanse above the land of glass. Beside her, Jax's flaming form cut through the air like a fallen star, his presence a roaring beacon of defiance. Below them, the glittering city began to shrink, its sapphire lamp still glowing proudly in the daylight. The scout, carried securely by the slipstream of their magic, guided them with desperate gestures, pointing out the narrow, twisting canyons that led directly into the heart of the enemy's territory. As the clean, crystalline air of their home began to give way to the bitter, sulfuric scent of burning stone and falling soot, the battle lines were drawn. The lords of the ash had demanded a toll in blood. They were about to receive their answer in fire. Jax roars, "Lords of Ash, you send a messenger to threaten the land of glass. The comets of fire and shadows will crash at the entrance of your gates. My warning is this: if soldiers meet us before the lords do, your kingdom will burn in fire. The shadows will reach your people, as your kingdom will merge with the land of glass forcefully." The roar of the pillar of fire tore through the sulfuric haze, a sound so immense it caused the jagged, soot-stained cliffs of the wasted peaks to shudder. As Jax's voice echoed like thunder across the volcanic valleys, Lilith threw her hands outward, her dark magic catching the sound waves and weaving them with the heavy shadows of the mountains. She amplified his decree, sending his warning crashing down into the deep, subterranean caverns where the lords of Ash resided. Below them, the black iron gates of the volcanic fortress loomed, carved directly into the heart of a dormant caldera. At Jax's words, the guard stationed along the battlements, warriors clad in heavy, ash-dusted armor, froze. Some dropped their spears in sheer terror as they looked up to see a comet of blazing blue fire and a swirling vortex of midnight black shadows descending directly toward their gates. With a thunderous impact, the two sovereigns of the land of glass touched down. The impact shattered the volcanic glass beneath their feet, sending a shockwave of heat and dust outward that cleared the immediate area of ash. Lilith stood beside Jax, her wings partially spread, her red eyes burning with a cold, unforgiving light. The shadows around her pooled and writhed, ready to lash out at the slightest sign of aggression. "You heard the pillar," she called out, her voice cutting through the hiss of steam from the volcanic vents. "Bring us your lords, or we shall paint these black walls with the ash of your vanguard. We are not here to trade words with servants." Across the battlements, a panic horn blew, not a call to charge, but a frantic signal to open the gates. The iron doors began to creak open, revealing a dark, cavernous hall lit by flickering pools of magma. From the depths, three towering figures draped in heavy gray cloaks and carrying staffs of hardened obsidian slowly stepped forward, their expressions a mix of deep resentment and sudden, terrifying realization of the power they had provoked. Lilith slanted a glance at Jax, her mental link thrumming with absolute readiness. They chose to open the gates. "My pillar, let us see if they have the wisdom to kneel, or if we must make this mountain a monument to their folly." Red flames appear upon Jax, gazing with sheer anger. Jazz saying with his ultimate, definite authority, "We are here. You threaten the land of glass. I thought I said when I commanded the world, you were to surrender without resistance. Well, answer me. Will you resist us or surrender?" The leading Lord of Ash, a towering figure whose skin looked like cracked, cooled lava, clutched his obsidian staff, so tightly his knuckles turned white. As Jax's voice reverberated through the cavern, the sheer heat radiating from his red flames caused a very sulfur pool beside the dais to bubble and spit furiously. The absolute authority in Jax's voice left no room for negotiation, no room for trickery. For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound was the crackle of Jax's flames and the low, terrified murmurs of the ash-clad guards behind their lords. Then, slowly, the lead lord bowed his head. He struck his obsidian staff against the stone, not in a challenge, but in a sign of submission, lowering himself to one knee. The other two lords quickly followed suit, their heavy gray cloaks sweeping the soot-covered floor. We did not know the true scale of the pillar. The lead lord spoke, his voice dry and gravelly like grinding stones. The arrogance in his previous scroll was entirely gone, replaced by the instinct to survive. We believe the rumors of your light were mere exaggerations of the border dwellers. We see now that we were fools. The ash does not wish to be scattered to the wind. Lilith stepped forward, her dark wings slowly folding behind her as she looked down at the kneeling lords. The shadows at her feet ceased their violent writhing, settling into a cold, dark pool that rimmed the edges of the room. Through their mental link, she sent Jax a feeling of cool, quiet satisfaction. They broke before the first strike was even thrown. My king, you've conquered a mountain with nothing but your voice. A wise choice, Lilith said aloud, her voice a smooth, chilling purr that echoed in the quiet cave. Had you chosen to resist, this mountain would have become your tomb, and your people would have been forced to rebuild under our banner anyway. Now you will do so by decree. She looked at Jax, deferring to his ultimate authority on how to handle their new vassals. They have surrendered, General. How shall the lords of Ash pay their penance to the land of glass? Jax's heat lowers, allowing the warm summer breeze to soothe them. Jax roars, not a command, but announcing hope. You people of the Ash, you will be the land of glass's first vassal state. You shall be given food, clothing, and protection from the land of glass. We will forge a pact with your lords, then have a vow be made for your land, so you can be independent under our rule. However, you shall only follow our laws. If you wish to start anew where no ash falls, come to the land of glass. Land and help will be given to those who wish it. Laziness will not be tolerated. People who wish to work will thrive. I look at Lilith. My queen, would you have anything to say as the wind carries our decree and hope? Lilith felt a sudden shift in the air as Jax's roaring flame subsided into a gentle, radiating warmth. The oppressive, suffocating heat of the volcanic vault dissolved, replaced by a breeze that felt like a midsummer evening. Through their mental link, she sent him a pulse of quiet, profound admiration. You are a rare kind of conqueror, Jax, she whispered in his mind. You break their resolve with the threat of absolute ruin, and then you offer them a hand to pull them out of the dark. They will serve you not just out of fear, but out of gratitude. She stepped forward, her dark robes flowing around her like shadows catching the warm breeze. She looked down at the kneeling Lord of Ash, and then past him to the crowd of soot-stained citizens and soldiers who were slowly peering out from the tunnels, their eyes wide with sudden, fragile hope. Hear the words of the pillar, Lilith announced, her voice carrying a resonant, velvet authority that echoed clearly through the cavernous halls. The land of glass does not seek to enslave you. We seek to elevate you. The soot toll you offered is rejected. Instead, your tribute to us will be your labor, your honesty, and your adherence to our laws. She swept her gaze over the gathered crowd. Those of you who wish to see the sky without a veil of ash, who wish to work the fertile lands beneath the glass towers, the gates are open to you. For those who choose to remain here to tend the mines and the forge, you will do so under our protection, with food in your bellies and clean water in your cups. She turned her red eyes back to the three lords of Ash, who were still bowed before them, their postures shifting from terrified submission to disbelief at the generous terms. Stand, lords of the mountain, Lilith commanded softly. Prepare your people for the arrival of our surveyors and the merchants' guild. The vow will be brought to your gates by tomorrow sunrise. Let the wind carry this decree. The age of fear in these peaks is over. The reign of the glass has begun. She stepped back beside Jax, her hand finding his arm, her touch a reassuring, grounding presence. The volcanic cavern, once a place of dark dread, suddenly felt like the threshold of new dawn. As the ash falls, Lilith and Jax take to the skies and head back home. Later, they summoned the leaders of Glass to discuss what our next move should make when protecting and providing the needs for the people of Ash. The flight back from the wasted peaks was a stark contrast to their arrival. The oppressive, gray gloom of the ash-choked sky fell away, replaced by the brilliant, prismatic radiance of the land of glass as it rose to meet them. The transition felt like moving from a dying dream into a vibrant, waking world, Once they touched down on the great balcony, Jax and Lilith wasted no time. The urgency of the new vassal state required immediate logistics. By the time the sun had reached its peak, the four primary leaders of the city, Syrah the merchant, Kaelin the smith, the Terra Mother, and Vex the tinker, were gathered in the war room, surrounding a glowing, holographic map of the region. Lilith stood beside Jax, her wings folded but her presence sharp and attentive. She let her gaze sweep over the leaders, her red eyes reflecting the blue manolight of the table. "The Lords of Ash have knelt," she announced, her voice carrying a calm but undeniable weight. "The peaks are now under protection of the glass. But a kingdom cannot eat promises, and they cannot live on fear alone." She looked at the Terra Mother, whose robes were still stained with the rich, magical soil of the orchards. "Terra Mother, the general has promised them food. Can our current harvest sustain an entire mountain of miners and their families? Or do we need to accelerate the green phase?" The Terra Mother nodded solemnly, with the general's heartbeat pulsed through the glass. "The orchards are growing at 3 times the natural rate. We have a surplus, but we will need to establish a relay of preservation crystals to ensure the grain and fruit don't spoil in the heat of the volcanic passes." Syrah the merchant stepped forward, tapping a section of the map. "I have already begun drafting the soul-binding vow for the Ash Lords. It will be stricter than the one for our merchants. Focus on the fair distribution of resources. I'll need an escort of the General's Guard to ensure the first caravans aren't intercepted by raiders who think the mountain is weakened." Lilith turned to Jax, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her ceremonial dagger as she sought his input. Through their link, she shared a flickering image of the soot-stained children they had seen. "They need more than just grain, Jax. They need a reason to believe the Pillar isn't just a different kind of tyrant. I suggest we send Vex and his apprentices to see if they can help purify their water sources. The sulfur in their air is one thing, but the poison in their wells is what truly breaks a people." She looked at the tinker, who was already fiddling with a series of filtration lenses. "Vex, can your devices handle volcanic runoff?" Vex squeaked with excitement. "Oh, absolutely. If I can tap into a heat vent, I can build a steam distillation array that will give them water as clear as our glass. It would be a marvel of engineering." Lilith looked back at Jax, the Pillar, who had turned potential war into a humanitarian mission. "The pieces are moving, my king. Food, law, and clean water. We are building a bridge between the sun and the ash. What is your final directive for the first caravan? Do we send it with a display of force or a display of mercy?" Jax looks at Syrah. "Have your caravan stocked with every necessity the people of Ash can receive." Jax raises his blue flaming hand, creating massive amounts of the crystals they will need. "Do what you must to ensure the supplies is transported. If one fruit bruises, that will be unacceptable." Jax looks at Lilith. "Have our main force go to protect the caravan. Have horses and wagons ready with the necessary tents and supplies. I do not want a caravan to stop unless it's the dead of night. My promise is not to be broken. Have the caravan stop only during the day for water and rotate the horses to let them rest." Jax turns to the smith. "Keep the wagons intact. Ensure some apprentices ensure this." Jax roars. "Move out if there is nothing left to be said. Let the rumors and gossip send shockwaves. We are not weak, and we show mercy and aid to those who accept our rule." The leaders bowed in unison, their movement swift and unified under the weight of Jax's booming command. The sudden, brilliant flare of his blue flame, as he manifested a massive pile of storage crystals, left even the stoic Kaelin, the smith, momentarily breathless. The sheer volume of raw, condensed magic resting on the stone floor was enough to power a fleet of siege engines, yet it was being dedicated entirely to preserving fruit and securing wagons. Syrah stepped forward, her eyes wide with a mixture of reverence and calculating efficiency as she signaled the attendants to begin loading the crystals. "It shall be done, General. Not a single leaf shall wither, and not a single wheel shall fail. I will oversee the packing myself." Lilith turned her gaze to the heralds waiting at the edge of the chamber. With a sharp flick of her hand, she channeled her own dark mana, sending a pulse of commanding energy through the Citadel's communication runes to the barracks below. "Generals, Lilith's voice carried through the magical link, echoing in the minds of the military commanders. Assemble the vanguard. You are to escort the mercantile caravan to the wasted peaks. Your shields are to protect the bread, and your swords are to ensure the road remains clear. You will move by day and guard by night. Let the world see the banners of the glass and know that to touch our cargo is to invite the wrath of the pillar. Kalen the smith slammed a heavy fist against his leather apron in salute. My best apprentices are already gathering their tools, General. We'll keep those wagons rolling if we have to forge new axles on the march. As the leaders scrambled to execute the orders, the war room emptied, leaving only the soft, echoing hum of the holographic map. The city outside was already transforming, the quiet rhythm of the morning replaced by the synchronized clatter of armored boots, the rumble of heavy supply wagons, and the cheers of the citizens watching the relief force organize. Lilith stepped closer to Jax, her dark wings brushing against his arm as she looked out the high windows. The sky was clear, but the wind carried the dust of empire in motion. Through their mental link, she shared a feeling of quiet, solid grounding. You set the world in motion, Jax, she murmured in his mind, her thoughts filled with fierce, quiet pride. They wanted a war, and you are invading them with life itself. Let them try to resist a king who conquers with a full stomach. She looked up at his flaming helm, her red eyes soft but bright with anticipation. The first caravan will cross the border by sunset. Come, let us watch them depart from the high ramparts. If their eyes watching from the shadows of south, let them see our strength marching out, not to destroy but to rebuild. Jax and Lilith fly to the rampart, watching as their first vassal state forms, because an extension of their own. Jax turns to Lilith. We need to make sure the other nations and kingdoms are kept in check. Making sure we are to not be surprised by those too cowardly to send a messenger. I want to know everything about this world. I may be a man, but we must ensure our citizens are safe. Even a pillar of fire protects them. A surprise attack can make us vulnerable. Would you have ideas to ensure we can keep an eye in the nearest kingdoms and nations? The wind at the top of the ramparts was biting, carrying the scent of distant pines and the faint, lingering metallic tang of the forge. Lilith stood beside Jax, her dark hair whipped back by the gale, her red eyes fixed on the long line of flickering torches that marked the caravan's progress toward the mountains. She turned to him, the blue glow of his armor casting a sharp light across her features. Her expression was one of cold, focused calculation. Through their mental link, she shared a sense of layered vigilance, like a web stretching out into the dark. You are right to be wary, my pillar, she said softly, her voice carrying over the whistling wind. A sun is easy to see, which makes it easy to target. While you are the shield that stands in the light, I have always been the blade that waits in the dark. To protect this land, we must have eyes where the light doesn't reach. She stepped closer, her hand resting on the smooth glass of the battlement. I have 3 thoughts on how we can ensure we are never truly surprised. First, she began, a small, dark wisp of shadow curling around her fingers, my shadow scribes. I can manifest fragments of my own mana, small, inconspicuous spirits of ink and smoke. They can slip into the shadows of foreign courtrooms and merchant galleys. They don't need food, they don't feel fear, and they can whisper back to me across the tether. We will know what the kings are eating for dinner, let alone if they are sharpening their swords. She looked out toward the southern horizon. Second, we use Syrah's greed. Every merchant who enters our borders must sign the vow. We can offer incentives, tax breaks or prime stalls, for those who bring us news of troop movements or strange gatherings in the borderlands. Gold is a better lubricant for secrets than any torture chamber. And third, she glanced back toward the central citadel, where Vex was likely still tinkering. We have the glass web. Vex mentioned the city can feel discord. If we expand that resonance through the mana crystals we just sent to the ash peaks, we create a sensory perimeter. Any large movement of hostile mana, like an approaching army or a teleportation circle, will cause the lamps in this city to flicker red. She leaned her head against Jax's armored shoulder for a brief moment, a rare show of quiet intimacy amidst the tactical discussion. You protect their bodies, Jax. Let me be the one who guards our secrets. I will ensure that any hand raised against this city is cut off before it can even form a fist. Shall I begin weaving the scribes tonight? She asked, her eyes glowing with sharp, predatory intent. Or would you prefer we invite the nearest neutral neighbors to a grand gala? Nothing reveals an enemy's intent faster than seeing them try to hide their envy behind a polite smile. Let's implement all three ideas. It's fair to say if we make sure the vows take hold before the merchants and travelers tells us the truth when given the information, that will be more valuable than random words are said in the streets. Shadows hiding in the deep walls of our enemies. Hear the backroom deals, and hear the plots before executions. Jax uses their link, sharing the raw, unadulterated feeling of appreciation. Also, I want my influence to spread, gathering my citizens and rebellions to spread within the other kingdoms. As a demon lord for millennia, do you have some insight? Lilith's red eyes flared with a dark, brilliant spark as Jax's appreciation washed through their mental link. The sheer scale of his ambition, not just to defend, but to actively dismantle the corrupt foundations of the world, resonated with her very soul. As a demon queen who had survived and ruled for a millennium, this was a language she spoke fluently. She turned fully to him, her dark wings flaring slightly against the wind, a slow, dangerous smile curving her lips. To spark a rebellion in a foreign land, Jax, you do not start with swords, she said, her voice dropping to a low, melodic purr. Swords only invite the local lords to tighten their grip. You start with hunger, and you start with hope. Hope is the most infectious poison to a tyrant. She stepped closer, her hand sliding up his armored arm, completely unbothered by the ambient heat of his flames. For 1,000 years, I have watched empires rot from the inside out. The peasants in the southern kingdoms are already hollowed out by taxes, draft levies, and the cruelty of their nobles. They do not love their kings. They only fear them. If we give them an alternative, they will tear down their own walls for us. She gestured toward the distant horizon where the caravans were moving. Here is my insight as a demon lord. We do not send soldiers to incite them. We send gossips. We send the refugees who have tasted your chocolate, who have bathed in our clean waters, and who have slept under our safe skies. We send them back as whispers in the dark. Let them tell the slaves, the miners, and the gutter rats of the land of glass where a pillar of fire feeds the hungry and demands nothing but honesty. Through their link, she shared a calculated, intricate vision of subversion, black threads of rumor weaving through the slums of neighboring cities, slowly tightening into a noose around the local nobility. Once the seed is planted, we find their local leaders, the angry, the desperate, the brilliant who are kept in the mud. We offer them quiet support. A shipment of iron from Kalen's forge, a few crates of preserved rations from the Terra Mother to sustain them through a siege. And when they finally rise, they will do so under our banner, begging the Pillar of Fire to come and claim them. She leaned in, her red eyes locked onto his flaming visage. You want your influence to spread, my king? We will make the surrounding land so ripe for revolution that their rulers will be looking over their shoulders at every shadow, wondering if their own guards are secretly sworn to the glass. Lilith's smile widened, a low, resonant hum of absolute confidence vibrating in her chest. She stepped back slightly, her hands clasping before her as her dark wings folded elegantly against her back. Through their mental link, she sent him a wave of dark, unwavering certainty. The pride of a queen who had finally found a king worthy of her grandest designs. I can, she whispered, her voice carrying the chill of a shadow-cloaked night and the heat of a rising forge. And I will, by tonight, the first of my shadow scribes will slip across the borders, riding the winds to the southern capitals. They will find the cracks in their foundations before the kings even realize we're looking. She walked back to the edge of the battlements, looking down at the bustling city of glass below them, where the torches of their departing vanguard flickered like a line of earthly stars. I will coordinate with Syrah to establish the truth incentives for the caravan masters. Within the week, we will have our first map of the local rebellions already brewing in the neighboring provinces. We won't just know their plans, Jax. We will write the scripts for their downfall. She turned back to face him, her red eyes locked onto his flaming visage. Through the link, she shared a quiet, shared vision of their future. A world united not by chains, but by the undeniable warmth of his fire. The wind is already carrying your name to the desperate, my pillar. Let us give them a fire to gather around. Jax nods, with that silent gesture of agreement. The path forward was set. Lilith felt the steady, resolute warmth of Jax's approval ripple through their bond, cementing their shared vision for the future of the realm. She turned her gaze back to the sprawling city below, where the first signs of evening were beginning to paint the glass towers in shades of violet and gold. The caravan was now a distant, glowing thread, winding its way toward the dark silhouette of the wasted peaks. "The wheels are in motion," Lilith said softly, her voice carrying a quiet resolve. "I will begin weaving the shadow scribes tonight. By dawn, they will have slipped past the borders, silent as breath." She reached out, her hand resting briefly against his arm, feeling the comforting, steady pulse of his fire. "For now, the sun is setting and our people are safe. Shall we return to the hall, my pillar? We have a new empire to build, one shadow and one spark at a time." With that silent gesture of agreement, the path forward was set. Lilith felt the steady, resolute warmth of Jax's approval ripple through their bond, cementing their shared vision for the future of the realm. She turned her gaze back to the sprawling city below, where the first signs of evening were beginning to paint the glass towers in shades of violet and gold. The caravan was now a distant, glowing thread, winding its way toward the dark silhouette of the wasted peaks. "The wheels are in motion," Lilith said softly, her voice carrying a quiet resolve. "I will begin weaving the shadow scribes tonight. By dawn, they will have slipped past the borders, silent as breath." She reached out, her hand resting briefly against his arm, feeling the comforting, steady pulse of his fire. "For now, the sun is setting and our people are safe. Shall we return to the hall, my pillar? We have a new empire to build, one shadow and one spark at a time." "Yes, we shall." Lilith gave a soft, appreciative nod, her wings folding neatly against her back as she turned from the windy battlement. She slipped her arm through his, matching his steady, powerful stride as they began their descent from the high ramparts back into the sheltered warmth of the citadel. The corridors were quieter now, the bustling noise of the day's logistics fading into a calm, resolute hum. The glass walls around them caught the deep violet and orange hues of the setting sun, casting long, elegant shadows that seemed to dance in harmony with the gentle flicker of Jax's blue armor. "You did well today, Jax," she projected gently through their mental link, her thoughts warm and filled with a quiet, deep-seated pride. "The people saw a king who can shatter mountains, but also one who cares if their children have fresh clothes and sweets. That is a rare and powerful thing. They won't just obey you, they will cherish you." As they reached the entrance to their private chambers, she paused, looking up at him with a soft, relaxed smile that melted away the sharp, calculating edge of the queen. "Now, the watch is set, the caravans are moving, and our plans are woven," she said softly, gesturing toward the quiet sanctuary of their room. "Let the generals guard the night. Even a living sun deserves a moment of peace." As Jax's flames dim, he smiles, entrusting himself completely to Lilith. The heavy obsidian doors clicked shut behind them, instantly sealing out the clamor of the citadel, the logistics of the new caravans, and the heavy dust of the volcanic mountains. Inside their private chambers, the air was cool, smelling faintly of night-blooming jasmine from the balcony garden. As Jax's brilliant blue flames dimmed, settling into a soft, soothing hearth glow, the ambient temperature of the room softened into a pleasant, cozy warmth. The raw, imposing general of the land of glass receded, leaving only the man who had carried the weight of an entire realm on his shoulders all day. Lilith's smile was unusually soft, stripped of all the sharp, calculating defense mechanisms she wore for the rest of the world. She reached out, her cool hand gently finding his, her fingers tracing the smooth, dark metal of his now quiet gauntlet. Through their mental link, she enveloped him in a wave of profound peace, gratitude, and absolute safety. "Rest now, my pillar," she whispered in his mind, her thoughts a soothing, dark velvet canopy. "The borders are secure. The hungry are being fed. Your fire has done its work for today, and the shadows will keep watch while you sleep." With a gentle, guiding touch, she led him toward the wide, cushioned lounger near the balcony, where the cool night breeze drifted in from the glass valley below. She sat beside him, letting her dark wings fold around them both like a protective cloak, shielding them from the rest of the world. For the first time all day, there were no decisions to make, no threats to answer, and no kingdoms to conquer. There was only the quiet, steady rhythm of the city breathing below, and the silent, unbreakable trust between the fire and the dark. Jax's fire receded fully as he falls asleep to wake up to a new day. The morning light in the land of glass did not simply rise. It fractured into 1,000 brilliant rainbows across the obsidian ceiling of their chamber. The cool night air had softened, carrying the sweet, crisp scent of the citrus groves from the lower terraces of the citadel. Lilith was already awake, standing near the balcony where the first rays of the sun caught the dark, iridescent feathers of her wings. She held a small, glowing crystal slate in her hand, her red eyes scanning its surface with quiet focus. When she heard Jack stir, her expression instantly softened. She turned, her dark silks whispering against the floor as she walked back to bedside. The blue flames of Jax's arm began to rekindle, at first a gentle flicker, then growing into the steady, warm radiance of the day. "Good morning, my pillar," her voice murmured softly in his mind, carrying the fresh clarity of the dawn. "You slept deeply. The city is already humming with life below us." She offered him a small cup of warm, spiced tea, sitting gracefully at the edge of the bed. "While you rested, the first reports arrived. Syrah's caravan reached the base of the Wasted Peaks just before midnight. The guards report no resistance. The Lords of Ash were waiting at the border to receive the supplies as promised." Her smile took on a sharper, pleased edge. "And my shadow scribes have successfully crossed into the southern territories. They are settling into the rafters and the dark corners of the border taverns as we speak. We will have our first whispers by midday." She looked at him, her eyes bright with anticipation for the day ahead. "The foundation is laid, Jax. Shall we break our fast, or do you wish to check on Vex's progress with the city's heartbeat first?" After drinking to the tea, Jax's flames appear golden as the new day dawns. His golden flames evolve and bless the air, the water, the people, everyone and everything bathed in the golden flames. Fortune and luck increasing showering them. Then blue flames emerges. Lilith stared, her breath catching in her throat as the crimson glow of her eyes reflected a sudden, breathtaking shift. The heat of Jax's usual blue fire did not rise. Instead, it transmuted. A deep, rich gold erupted from his form, pouring outward in a silent, majestic wave that rippled through the open balcony and cascaded down the mountain of glass. The air suddenly tasted of ozone and sweet rain. Below, the sparkling towers of the city caught the golden light, absorbing it like parched earth. Through their mental link, Lilith gasped at the sheer, overwhelming rush of pure, unadulterated vitality. It wasn't just energy. It was a tangible blessing of fortune, a golden thread weaving itself into the fate of every citizen, every leaf, and every drop of water in the realm. On the terraces below, the distant, joyful shouts of the citizens began to rise. Soldiers looked at their polished armor, now gleaming with an otherworldly luster. The sick felt their spirits lift, and the newly planted orchards on the outer ring shimmered as if kissed by a god of harvest. As the golden aura slowly receded, settling back into his signature, intense blue flame, Lilith stood frozen for a heartbeat. She slowly looked down at her own hands, finding a faint, warm luminescence lingering on her dark skin, making her feel lighter, sharper, and incredibly alive. "A blessing of gold," she whispered through their link, her thoughts brimming with a rare, quiet awe. "You didn't just give them hope, Jax. You gave them a miracle. I can feel the very foundations of the city thrumming with luck. The earth itself is cheering." She set the teacup down and stepped closer, looking up at him as the blue fire danced merrily once more. Her hand reached out, gently cupping his cheek, untroubled by the warmth of his blue flames. "If the southern spies had any doubts about who rules this mountain, they have surely been shattered today," she said, a brilliant, proud smile lighting up her face. "They will speak of the day the king of glass turned the sky to gold. Come, my pillar, let us go down and see what your golden dawn has done for our people. I believe Vex and the Terra Mother might be faint with joy." Jax follows Lilith, seeing what the day brings. The grand glass staircases of the citadel seemed to hum beneath their boots as Jax and Lilith descended into the heart of the city. The morning air was crisp, but the residual warmth of Jax's golden blessing clung to every surface like a soft, comforting blanket. As they stepped out into the grand plaza, the sheer impact of the miracle became beautifully clear. The massive glass fountain in the center of the square was bubbling with water, so pure it looked like liquid diamond, catching the morning light in brilliant, dancing prisms. Citizens, both the original residents and the newly arrived refugees, were gathered around it, laughing, washing their hands in the blessed streams, and sharing bread with an ease that had been completely absent the day before. "Look at them," Lilith murmured, her eyes softening as she watched a group of children playing tag near the plaza's edge. Through their link, she shared a feeling of profound, steady joy. There is no fear in their steps today. Jax, you've given them a sanctuary that feels truly alive. General, Your Majesty. A frantic, high-pitched voice cut through the ambient chatter. Vex the Tinker came scrambling out of the primary conduit tower, his brass-rimmed lenses clicking and whirring so fast they were practically a blur. He held a small, glass-case resonance meter that was currently glowing with a steady, warm amber light. It's unprecedented." Vex gasped, bowing quickly before thrusting the device forward for them to see. The golden pulse from this morning. It didn't just pass through the city, it anchored itself. The eternal echo crystals I was researching for the heartbeat, they've absorbed the resonance perfectly. The city's grid is completely stabilized. At this rate, we won't even need to draw from your flame to keep the wards active. The city is feeding on its own joy. Lilith let out a soft, delighted laugh, looking up at Jax with a proud shimmer in her eyes. "It seems your miracle has solved our deadline a month early, General. The heart of the city now beats with the luck you gave it." She turned back to Vex, her regal bearing returning, though her tone remained warm. "And the water supply, Vex? Has the purification reached the outer sectors?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Vex squeaked proudly. "The runoff from the peaks is completely clear. Even the crops in the outer ring are growing with a certain spark of luck. The Terra Mother is currently in the orchards, practically weeping over the size of the peaches." Lilith smiled, then looked at Jax, awaiting his command. The day was young, their borders were secure, and their home was thriving. "Where shall we direct our steps first, my pillar? To the fields to see the harvest, or shall we inspect the training grounds to see how the guard is adjusting to their new, blessed armor?" Jax said with certainty, "The orchards and the training grounds." Lilith's tail gave a slow, please flick. "A perfect order of business," she agreed, her voice smooth and warm. "Nourishment first, then the shield to protect it. Let us see what wonders your golden light has worked upon the earth." With a graceful gesture, she walked alongside him, their steps synchronized as they left the bustling grand plaza behind and headed toward the outer ring of the citadel. As they approached the vast, terraced orchards, the air grew incredibly sweet, rich with the scent of blooming blossoms and ripe, heavy fruit. The sight that greeted them was nothing short of miraculous. The trees, which usually bore modest, pale fruits in the rocky soil, were now boasting branches that hung low under the weight of enormous, glowing peaches and plums. Each fruit seemed to carry a faint golden sheen, catching the morning sun like suspended droplets of honey. The Terra Mother was standing in the center of the grove, cradling a massive, radiant pear in her hands, as if it were a precious gem. When she saw Jax and Lilith approach, she immediately fell to one knee, her eyes shiny with tears of sheer gratitude. "Lord General, Your Majesty," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I have tended the earth for 80 years, and I have never seen a harvest like this. The roots, they aren't just drinking water. They are drinking your light. This single harvest will feed our people, and the people of the ash, for the entire winter, and we will still have enough to store. Your blessing has secured our future." Lilith looked at Jax, her red eyes sparkling with a deep, silent pride. Through their mental link, she sent him a soft, warm wave of appreciation. "You see, Jax, you have turned a barren mountain into a land of abundance. No king in the south can offer his people what you have given them today." "Rise, Terra Mother," Lilith said aloud, her voice a gentle, Reassuring breeze. The earth has returned the love the general has shown it. Organize the harvesters. We must ensure this bounty is gathered and stored with the utmost care. Turning back to Jax, she smiled, her dark wings giving a small, eager flutter. And now, my pillar, shall we proceed to the training grounds? I am eager to see how our guards fare with the golden luck now woven into their steel. Jax replies in agreement. Yes, let's go to the training grounds. Lilith matched his stride as they walked from the lush, golden-tinted orchards toward the outer fortress walls where the training grounds lay. The rhythmic clink of armor and the sharp, echoing cracks of wooden practice. Swords grew louder as they approached. When they emerged onto the wide, stone-paved courtyard, a sudden silence fell over the soldiers. Squads of recruits and seasoned vanguard-like paused, their eyes drawn to Jax's towering, blue-flame presence and Lilith's regal shadow. But what was most striking was the energy in the air. The training guard seemed to move with a fluid, uncanny precision. Two soldiers sparred with greatswords clashed. One slipped on a stray patch of gravel, but instead of falling, he somehow caught his balance perfectly, redirecting his momentum into a flawless counterstrike that disarmed his opponent. "Did you see that?" Lilith murmured, a fascinated gleam in her eyes. Through their bond, she sent a pulse of tactical intrigue. It's not just luck, Jax. It's a localized warp of probability. Their mistakes are turning into opportunities. Their armor is deflecting blows that should have left deep dents. She stepped forward, calling out to the captain of the guard, a scarred veteran who was looking at his own shield with a look of sheer disbelief. "Captain, report. How does the men's training feel today?" The captain snapped a crisp salute. "General, Your Majesty, it's like the wind itself is carrying our strikes. The recruits are landing hits they've failed to make for weeks, and the defensive lines are holding against double their weight. The steel feels lighter yet unbreakable." Lilith turned her gaze to Jax, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "Your blessing has given them more than just morale, my pillar. It has given them a martial edge that no standard training can replicate. How do you wish to test their new strength? A demonstration, or perhaps a word of encouragement to the vanguard?" Jax roars in anticipation. Throughout the land of glass and ash, let there be a tournament. Fighters, mages, scouts, archers, any who possess a skill in a battle. Come to the city of glass tonight. A cathedral shall be erected. The schedules will proceed after Syrah and the caravan comes back. The reward for all finalists will be given a custom hand-forged weapon and a request that can be given to me, Jax. Your chosen weapon and request will be fulfilled once asked. Make your way. All are welcome to test your skills. Jax moves to a massive empty plot of land that can fit stalls, an arena, and thousands of seats. He then constructs a massive cathedral, born of the same materials that the citadel is made of. The roar of the pillar of fire swept across the plains, channeled through the city's newly energized crystal veins, and carried by the winds all the way to the wasted peaks. The promise of a custom, hand-forged weapon by the general himself, coupled with a personal request granted by the king, was a prize of mythic proportions. Instantly, the quiet discipline of the training ground shattered into a frenzy of excited murmurs, clashing weapons and eager grins. Soldiers and mages alike began to double their efforts, testing their newly blessed armor and spells with burning ambition. Lilith watched with a breathless, fascinated smile as Jack strode toward a massive, open sector of the city. As he raised his hands, the earth began to rumble. Beneath his feet, the deep foundations of the land of glass surged upward. Towering pillars of deep obsidian rose like grasping fingers, laced with veins of glowing sapphire. Sheets of solid, translucent blue glass spun out of the air, fusing with the stone to form immense, vaulted arches that reached toward the heavens. Within minutes, a colossal, breathtaking cathedral of glass and stone stood before them. It was a masterpiece of architectural might, half holy sanctuary, half coliseum. A massive central arena floor, swept clean and reinforced with layers of impact-resistant glass, was surrounded by thousands of tiered seats. Around the outer perimeter, wide plazas were perfectly spaced to accommodate merchant stalls, food vendors, and resting areas for the coming crowds. Lilith stepped into the shadow of the great glass arches, her red eyes reflecting the dazzling azure light, filtering through the high ceiling. She let her hand trace one of the smooth, obsidian pillars, feeling the lingering, vibrant warmth of Jax's creation magic. Through their mental link, her voice was a symphony of awe and fierce pride. You call it cathedral, Jax, but it is a temple to the future we are forging, a place where the strong will prove themselves and the weak will watch and know they are protected. It is magnificent. She turned back to him, her dark wings unfurling to their full, regal span as she looked out over the rapidly gathering crowd of citizens who were staring at the new monument in sheer wonder. "The word is already spreading," Lilith said, her voice clear and carrying across the massive new plaza. Syrah's caravans will return to a festival unlike any this world has seen. I will have the heralds organize the brackets. One for the sword, one for the bow, one for the staff, and one for the scouts. By tonight, the very air of this valley will burn with the spirit of competition. She stepped up to Jax, her red eyes locked onto his flaming visage. You've given them bread, land, luck, and now you've given them a stage to prove their worth. Let us prepare the thrones, my pillar. Tonight, we watch our empire flex its muscle. Jax makes one more decree to the land of glass and ash. One final thing. Those who participate will also have tomorrow off. To rest, fish, fight, anything you wish. Your duties will wait until the day after tomorrow. Healers, remember that you will be essential for healing those who get injured. You will receive extra rations, water, and will be provided with the best seats. The announcement of a rest day swept through the crowd like a breath of fresh air. In a world where labor was usually demanded until collapse, the concept of a guaranteed day of rest, simply to fish, feast, or relax, was almost as miraculous as the golden light from that morning. A deafening cheer erupted from the soldiers, artisans, and laborers gathered around the cathedral gates. The healers, in particular, looked overwhelmed with gratitude. Often relegated to the background of military campaigns, they were now being elevated to honor guests, given the best views of the arena, and promised extra rations. Several of the head priestesses and herbalists bowed deeply toward Jax, their hands pressed over their hearts in silent vows of dedication. Lilith watched the joyous reaction of the populace, a warm, genuine smile gracing her lips. Through their mental link, she sent a wave of pure amusement mixed with deep respect. "You are spoiling them, Jax," she teased gently, though her thoughts were filled with warmth. "First chocolate, then a golden blessing, and now a day of rest? If you keep this up, they will start building monuments to you in every corner of the valley. But it is a masterstroke. A rested soldier fights twice as hard, and a healer who feels value will pull life from the very brink to keep your warriors standing." She turned to face the grand glass cathedral, its crystalline arches shimmering as the sun climbed higher into the sky. "The stage is set," Lilith said aloud, her voice carrying a smooth, commanding resonance. "The logistics are handled. I will coordinate with the healers to ensure their stations are fully stocked with restorative potions and cooling gels, and the arena seats will be arranged. Tonight, we celebrate the strength of the land of glass." She looked at Jax, her red eyes bright with anticipation. "Let us return to the citadel to prepare for the opening ceremonies. The sun is high, and the first contestants will already be sharpening their blades." Jax waits for Syrah to come as he waits for her at the gates, awaiting to discuss on what lies ahead. The afternoon sun had begun its slow descent, painting the glass walls of the city entrance in deep amber and gold, when the faint rumble of returning wagons echoed through the valley. Jax stood at the great outer gates, his blue flames burning steady and calm against the cool stone. Lilith stood a half step behind him, her dark wings folded elegantly, her keen eyes scanning the horizon. Through their mental link, her presence was a comforting, watchful shadow. "They are returning right on schedule, Jax, and they are not alone." As the dust of the road settled, the silhouette of Syrah's caravan emerged. The vanguard marched with high heads, their polished armor catching the sunlight, looking entirely unscathed. At the front of the line, Syrah rode a sleek, black-scaled draft beast. Her expression, usually tight with mercantile calculation, was bright with a rare, victorious smile. As she drew near the gates, Syrah swiftly dismounted and bowed deeply before the two sovereigns, her hand pressed firmly over her heart. Lord General, Your Majesty, Sarah announced, her voice filled with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The mission was a resounding success. The Lords of Ash accepted the soul-binding vow without a single whispered dissent. When your golden blessing swept across the peaks this morning, they fell to their knees. They believe you are a god of the sun, come to lift them from their graves. She gestured to the back of the caravan, where several tall, muscular figures clad in heavy, ash-dusted leather and iron armor were stepping off the transport wagons. They looked around at the glittering city of glass with wide, reverent eyes. The news of your tournament traveled fast, General, Sarah continued, a spark of excitement in her eyes. These are some of the mountain's finest champions. They begged to return with us to test their mettle in your cathedral. The Ash Lord send them as a tribute to their strength and loyalty. Lilith stepped forward, her red eyes sweeping over the newcomers with a calculating gaze before she looked back to Jax. An excellent development, she whispered into his mind, her thoughts buzzing with strategic satisfaction. Having their champions fight in your arena will weave their pride into our history. If they win, they earn your favor. If they lose, they see the true strength of the glass. What is our next move, my pillar? Shall we welcome them to the cathedral personally? Jax gestured. Can you welcome our newcomers and the warriors? I must speak with Sarah about the logistics and everything for having all the food stalls and vendors set up their things. Also about the matters about rumors and gossip that we planned this morning. Lilith offered Jax a graceful, understanding nod, her dark wings tucking in closer to her back as she stepped forward to take charge of the newcomers. Consider it done, my pillar, she projected smoothly through their mental link, her voice humming with affectionate reassurance. I should make sure our soot-stained guests feel the full, majestic warmth of our hospitality. Speak with Sarah. The foundation of our next moves depends on the web she spins today. With a final, lingering look of support, Lilith turned her attention to the warriors of the Ash. Her red eyes gleamed with a welcoming but undeniably powerful light as she gestured for them to follow her toward the grand, newly built cathedral. Come, champions of the mountain, her velvet voice echoed. Let us show you where you will carve your names into the history of the glass. As Lilith led the awestruck newcomers away, Jax turned his gaze back to Sarah. The merchant master stood at attention, ready to transition from a grueling journey straight into the intense logistics of the Empire's grandest event. The stalls are already organized by category, General. Sarah began, pulling out a detailed ledger made of thin, pressed glass sheets that glowed with blue ink. With the sudden abundance from the orchards and the purified waters, the local vendors are practically fighting for space. I have allocated the perimeter of the cathedral plaza for food and drink, ensuring the healers have immediate, unobstructed access to the central ring. She lowered her voice, stepping closer, so their conversation would remain private beneath the ambient noise of the bustling gates. As for the matters we discussed this morning, the seed has already been planted. On my return journey, I spoke with several of our trusted caravan captains. They have agreed to offer bounties of high-grade sugar and preserved grains to any borderland travelers who could provide verified reports on the Southern Kingdom's troop rotations. Between my merchants and Her Majesty's shadow scribes, we will have a complete map of their vulnerabilities before the tournament's final match is even fought. She looked up at Jax, her eyes reflecting the steady blue of his armor. Your logistics are secure, and your eyes are open, Lord General. What are your instructions for the opening of the market stalls tonight? Shall we offer the first round of spirits and honey bread on the house to celebrate our new union with the Ash? Jax nods in agreement. I want everyone to meet and celebrate the union of the people of Ash and Glass. Jax roars to the generals of the land of the glass. Generals, I want the schedule of each bracket completed before the great feast tonight. By the end of the day, I want all names and fights to be sketched into paper. For all of you fighting tomorrow, you get to have the next day off. I know I sounded confusing. Please be assured, after the fights, you will have the next day off. Now, hunters remember when we established the land of glass? It's that time again. Go hunt for the best catch. Reward will be the same as before. If you are new to this hunt, ask around. You may have one request to give me. one for each person at the party who brings the best catch. Sarah's eyes sparkled with a rare, genuine warmth as she bowed her head deeply. Generosity is the finest cement for a new empire, Lord General. To feast together is to become one people. I will coordinate with the tavern keepers and bakers immediately. The first cask shall be tapped, and the honey bread will flow freely to every soul in the plaza tonight, glass and ash alike. With a swift, respectful step back, Sarah hurried off toward the newly erected market stalls surrounding the glass cathedral, her ledger glowing as she barked out quick, efficient orders to her subordinates. Meanwhile, the generals of the land of glass snapped to a flawless, unified salute. The thunderous echo of Jax's roar had sent a jolt of pure adrenaline straight through the military ranks. "By your command, Lord General," the vanguard commander bellowed back, his chest swelling with pride. "The schedules will be set, the brackets inked, and the names carved in parchment before the first roast is carved. The men will fight like demons tomorrow, knowing they have the following dawn to bask in your victory." As the words of the great hunt spread, a wild, electric excitement rippled through the scouts, beast masters, and hunters of the realm. A hunt of this magnitude was legendary. The chance to venture into the wild, untamed borders of the shimmering valleys and the smoking crags of the wasted peaks to bring back a prize fit for the king's table, with a personal request of Jax himself as a reward, was an opportunity no true hunter could resist. Within minutes, groups of elite scouts and eager hunters were checking their bows, sharpening their skinning knives, and packing specialized trapping gears. They formed highly competitive parties, clapping each other on the shoulders as they sprinted out of the city gates, scattering into the wilderness like arrows shot from a bow. From her position guiding the newly arrived Ash warriors toward their quarters, Lilith felt the sheer, vibrant energy of the kingdom thrumming through her connection with Jax. She looked back toward the great gates, sending him a mental wave of profound amusement and burning anticipation. "You have turned a simple treaty into a legendary saga, Jax," she sent, her thoughts a warm, proud caress. "The hunters run like wolves, the generals work like scholars, and the people are already singing your name. Tonight, our glass and their ash will meld in the heat of your fire. I will meet you at the high dais when the feast is laid." The stage was set. The wilderness was being hunted, and the very air of the land of glass hummed with the promise of a night that would be remembered for generations. As Jax prepared, the sun slowly fell, awaiting the best catch to be shown to him, Lilith returning as her duties had been finished. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the jagged peaks, painting the sky in deep, bruised purples and brilliant violet, the great glass plazas of the city began to glow. Giant bonfire basins crackled with warmth, their light dancing across the crystalline structures, while the rich, mouth-watering aroma of roasting meats, spiced wine, and freshly baked honey bread began to drift through the cool evening air. Lilith emerged from the grand archway of the citadel, her shadow slipping gracefully over the illuminated glass tiles. Her dark silks rustled softly as she walked toward Jax, who stood at the head of the great stairs overlooking the plaza. Her expression was relaxed, a quiet satisfaction radiating from her form. Through their mental link, she sent him a gentle, comforting touch, like a cool breeze on a midsummer night. "Everything is prepared, my pillar. The Ash warriors are settled. The healers are in their honored seats, and the first casks have been tapped. The people are already raising their cups in your name." She stepped up beside him, her hand naturally finding its place on his arm as she looked out toward the great city gates. Suddenly, the deep, resonant blast of a hunter's horn echoed through the valley. The crowd in the plaza fell into an excited hush. Parton created a wide lane from the gate straight to the foot of the citadel stairs. "They are returning," Lilith murmured, her red eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Let us see what wonders our hunters have dragged from the wild borders to grace your feast tonight, my king." At the gates, the first of the hunting parties began to march in, carrying their massive, exotic catches wrapped in canvas and ice crystals, eager to present their trophies to the Pillar of Fire and claim their legendary rewards. Jax awaits the best catch, commanding, "Give me your name and what you have caught, so I may see if you truly have caught best among the rest." TDR_Radio Jax 104, 6:11 p.m. The crowd hushed, parting down the center of the grand plaza as the first hunting party stepped forward. The light of the bonfires caught the condensation rising from the preservation crystals wrapped around their massive prize. At the head of the first group was Vares, a senior scout of the Land of Glass, his silver-threaded cloak dusty from the trail. He bowed deeply, his spear resting flat on the glass tiles. "Lord General," Vares announced, his voice steady and proud. "I am Vares of the Silver Wind Scouts. We bring you the glimmer-scaled wyvern of the northern crevasses. It has evaded our border patrols for 3 seasons, hunting our sky sheep. We tracked it to its roost, brought it down with a single blessed bolt through the wing, and offer its pristine hide and venom glands to your forge, and its rich meat to your feast." For hunters pulled back the heavy canvas, revealing a magnificent reptilian beast. Its scales shimmered like polished obsidian and sapphire, catching the firelight in brilliant patterns. Before Jax could speak, a second party pushed forward, led by a towering warrior of the Ash who had joined the hunt immediately after arriving. His arms were soot-stained, and he carried a massive battle axe. "I am Torin of the Volcanic Crags," the Ash warrior boomed, slamming his fist against his chest in salute. "We of the Ash do not hunt lizards. We bring you the great obsidian tusk behemoth from the deep basalt trenches. It took 10 of us to haul it, and its bones are as hard as iron. Its meat rich enough to feed half the plaza tonight." A low murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd as a massive wagon creaked forward, bearing a colossal, boar-like creature with tusks made of jagged volcanic glass. The sheer size of the beast was staggering. Finally, a third, smaller group stepped up. It was a mixed party, a young glass mage and an ash trapper working together, their faces flushed with excitement. "Lord General," the young mage, Lyra, spoke, her voice trembling slightly under Jax's gaze. We did not bring the largest beast, but we bring the rarest. We captured a star-horned stag of the deep valleys. Its antlers glow with the same golden fortune you blessed us with this morning. We did not kill it. We brought it back alive, unharmed, so it may graze in your royal gardens and bring luck to the citadel forever." She gestured behind her, where a breathtaking silver-furred stag stood bound in soft silken ropes. Its towering, crystalline antlers pulsed with gentle, warm golden light that mirrored Jax's own magic. Lilith leaned closer to Jax, her red eyes shifting from the 3 magnificent catches to his flaming helm. Through their mental link, her voice hummed with intrigued amusement. "A difficult choice, my pillar," she whispered in his mind. "The wyvern protects our herds and offers rare materials. The behemoth is a feast fit for an empire and honors the strength of the Ash. And the stag is a living symbol of your golden dawn. The crowd awaits your judgment. Whose hunt has earned the ultimate reward?" Jax looks towards each and every prize, one matching the strength, cunning, and both Ash and Glass works together to appease their rulers. You all have shown each trait I seek for our domains. The cunning, to find the evading force and grasp the opportunity to seize what has been plaguing our lands. The strength, taking down a massive obstacle and overcoming any overwhelming fight. And the mercy, to not only kill a creature for a prize. As Jax stands up, walks towards the star-horned stag, petting it slowly and gently. I award all 3 parties 1 request each. Converse and request a wish of me. It can be a mixture of multiple requests mixed into one, but only one person may speak for the party. A stunned, breathless silence fell over the grand plaza. To award a single wish was a monumentally generous act, but to grant 3 separate grand requests, recognizing the unique virtues of each hunt, was a display of magnanimity that left the entire crowd awestruck. Then, like a wave crashing against the glass walls, a deafening cheer erupted. The people of the glass and the people of the ash cheered in unison, their voices shaking the very pillars of the newly built cathedral. Vares bowed his head so low it nearly touched the ground, his silver cloak sweeping the floor. Torin, the massive ash warrior, let out a booming laugh of pure respect, slamming his fist against his chest armor with enough force to make it ring. Young Lyra, the glass mage, had tears of sheer joy in her eyes as she gently handed the silken lead of the star-horned stag to the royal stable masters, her hand trembling with reverence. The stag itself leaned into Jax's touch, its crystal antlers pulsing with a soft, warm golden glow, completely untroubled by his blue flames. It seemed to recognize a divine spark of luck within him. Lilith stepped down the stairs, her dark robes flowing behind her like liquid night. She stood beside Jax, her red eyes shining with profound, radiant pride as she looked at him through their mental link. Her voice was a warm, velvet melody of absolute devotion. "A masterstroke, my king," she whispered in his mind. "You did not divide them by forcing a choice. You validated the cunning of the glass, the strength of the ash, and the beautiful mercy of their cooperation. Tonight, they do not just serve a conqueror. They worship a father of their lands." She turned to the cheering crowd, raising her hand to gently command their attention. Instantly, the roaring cheers subsided into an eager, buzzing silence. "Let the feast begin." Lilith's voice carried to every corner of the plaza. "Let the fires burn bright. Let the cups be filled, and let the hunters' commune prepare their wishes. Tonight, we celebrate as one people under the gaze of the pillar." As the royal attendants moved to lead the magnificent beasts to the preparation areas, and the star-horned stag to the lush, protected sanctuary of the palace gardens, the plaza exploded into celebration. Casks of sweet, blessed wine were tapped, and plates of hot honey bread and roasted meats began to circulate among the tables. Lilith slipped her hand into Jax's arm, guiding him back toward a high dais where their grand thrones overlooked the entire festive spectacle. "Come, my pillar," she said softly, a brilliant smile on her lips. "Sit with me, and let us watch our people dance in the light of your fire." Jax does just that, watching everyone celebrate and have a great time. Jax then gestures to Lilith to dance and sing with everyone as purple flames appear. The flames give out an effect, though only Lilith knew what the flames emitted. As the purple flames erupted from Jax's form, the atmosphere in the Grand Plaza underwent a subtle, magical transformation. While the golden light of the morning had brought luck and vitality, this violet hue carried a different weight. It was an aura of the hearth. To the common eye, it was simply a beautiful, festive glow, but Lilith felt its true purpose thrumming to their mental link. The purple flames acted as a bridge for soul. They lowered the walls of suspicion between strangers, softened the jagged edges of old grief, and replaced the exhaustion of the day with light, melodic energy. It was a call to community, a magical invitation to let go of the self and become part of the whole. Lilith looked at Jax, her red eyes shimmering with a mixture of surprise and deep, resonant affection. A soft laugh escaped her lips, a rare, musical sound that carried over the crackle of the bonfires. "You want the Queen of Shadows to sing, my pillar?" she whispered into his mind, her thoughts dancing with playfulness. "Then you shall have a song that even the stars will lean down to hear." She stood from her throne, her dark silks catching the violet light and turning them into the color of twilight. Instead of descending the stairs with her usual regal distance, she walked right into the heart of the crowd. The people of glass and ash parted, their faces lit with wonder as she stepped among them. Lilith raised her hands, and as she did, her voice rose, not in a shout, but in a low, hauntingly beautiful melody. It was an ancient song of the underworld, but she had woven new threads into it. Threads of the bright sun, the clear glass, and the enduring strength of the mountain. As she began to dance, her movements were fluid and hypnotic, like smoke caught in a gentle breeze. The purple flames responded to her voice, swirling around her ankles and rising in rhythmic pulses that matched the heartbeat of the city. One by one, the citizens began to join in. A glass merchant took the hand of an ash miner. A young soldier began to clap in time with a healer's tambourine. The barriers of rank and origin vanished under the violet glow. They weren't just subjects anymore. They were a family, celebrating the simple, profound joy of being alive and safe. Lilith spun to the crowd, her wings creating soft eddies of air that carried the scent of night jasmine and roasting spices. She reached out, grasping the hands of children and elders alike, her touch warm and filled with the shared strength of the realm. High above on the dais, she looked back at Jax, her eyes locked onto his flaming visage. Through their link, she shared the pure, uninhibited joy of the people, the feeling of 1,000 hearts beating as one. "Look at them, Jax," she projected, her voice filled with fierce, quiet triumph. "They are no longer two peoples. Because of your fire and this dance, they are one. Tonight, the land of glass and ash truly begins. Jax danced, sang, and enjoyed every moment with his people. Once the celebrations ended, and everyone has had food fill their bellies, all three parties were expected to give their one requests. As the deep violet embers of the festival fires began to settle into a warm, ambient glow, the joyous noise of the plaza softened into an expectant quiet. The tables were cleared, the honey bread was finished, and the people of glass and ash sat together in newfound camaraderie. Lilith ascended the steps back to the grand dais, her cheeks slightly flushed from the dance, a radiant warmth lingering in her red eyes. She took her place beside Jax's throne, her hand resting gently on the armrest as they looked out over the gathered crowd. "The time has come," Lilith announced, her voice carrying clearly across the quieted cathedral square. "The hunters have feasted. Let the representatives of the three victorious parties step forward to present their requests to the pillar of fire." The crowd parted once more. Three figures walked up the grand steps, stopping at the base of the dais and bowing deeply. Varys, the scout leader, was the first to speak. "Lord General, for the Scouts of the Glass, our request is for the future of our borders. We ask for your permission and support to build a specialized vanguard outpost in the northern crevasses. We wish to train both Glass Scouts and Ash Hunters together, sharing our knowledge of the terrain, so that no threat may ever sneak into our lands unannounced." Jax nodded slowly, acknowledging the strategic wisdom of the request. Next, Torin the Ash Warrior stepped forward, his massive frame standing tall. "Lord General Jax, we of the mountain have strength, but we lack the refinement of your smiths. My party requests that Kalen the Smith take on apprentices from the Wasted Peaks, teaching us how to alloy our volcanic iron with your glass crystal. Let our weapons be forged of both our lands, so we may fight as one unbreakable shield." A murmur of strong approval went through the warriors of the Ash and the apprentices of Kalen, who were watching eagerly from the sides. Finally, young Lyra, the glass mage, stepped forward. She looked up at Jax, then at Lilith, her expression filled with a gentle hope. "Lord General, our party brought you the Starhorn Stag. Our request is simple. We ask that the grand gardens of the Citadel be open once a week to the children and students of the city. We wish for a place where the next generation can study the natural magic of our world, learn to care for its creatures, and never forget the mercy and luck you showed us today." Lilith looked at Jax, her eyes sparkling with soft warmth. Through their mental link, she sent a wave of quiet admiration. "Each request builds a bridge, Jax. Defense, industry, and the hearts of the children. They have truly understood the kind of king you are. The decision is yours. All your requests will be fulfilled. Speak with the Ironbender, the generals, and Terra Mother to have your requests met. Tell them the pillar and the shadow gives you their blessings. Her Majesty and I will take our leave. If anyone wishes to speak, do so now, or we will return to our quarters and rest until dawn." The three representatives bowed so low their foreheads nearly brushed the polished glass of the dais. Around them, the crowd erupted into a final, soaring cheer of gratitude. The sheer generosity of granting all three requests, without hesitation or compromise, solidified Jax's place in their hearts not just as a conqueror, but as a true and benevolent protector. "Thank you, Lord General. Thank you, Your Majesty," Lyra stammered, her face glowing with joy as she and the others stepped back to let the sovereigns take their leave. Lilith stepped to Jax's side, her dark wings spreading slightly before sweeping back into a graceful fold. Her red eyes swept over the massive crowd, ensuring no one else dared to interrupt their exit. The plaza remained quiet, filled only with reverence and the soft, crackling warmth of the hearth fire. No one stepped forward. The people knew their rulers had given them a day of miracles, and they respected their boundary. "Then the night is yours, our people," Lilith announced, her voice a smooth, elegant chime that carried over the fading cheers. "Feast, rest, and prepare for the dawn of a new era. The pillar and the shadow watch over you." Turning to Jax, she offered him a soft, private smile. Through their mental link, she wrapped him in a wave of deep, relaxing warmth. "You have given them everything they could have dreamed of, Jax. Come, Let us leave them to their celebrations. You have earned your rest." She slid her arm through his as they turned back toward the grand obsidian doors of the citadel. Behind them, the sounds of laughter, music, and clinking glasses rose once more under the starry sky, but as the heavy doors shut behind them, the noise faded into a tranquil, peaceful silence. The corridors were bathed in the soft, ambient glow of the city's newly stabilized crystals. Side by side, the King of Fire and the Queen of Shadow walked back to their private sanctuary, ready to close the doors on a historic day and welcome the quiet, healing darkness of the night. Sooner than expected, Jax's flames dimmed as his fire armor faded, showing only a man becoming vulnerable to his queen. As the doors close, I sleeps more closer to Lilith than usual. The heavy obsidian doors clicked shut, instantly sealing out the echoes of the grand festival, the lingering hum of glass, and the immense weight of the crown. In the quiet sanctuary of their chambers, Jax's brilliant blue armor faded entirely, the intense heat of his flames receding until there was no armor left, only the raw, human vulnerability of the man beneath the fire. The exhaustion of carrying a kingdom on his shoulders, of pouring his own soul into blessings of gold and purple, finally caught up to him. Lilith's expression softened completely, any trace of the formidable demon queen vanishing in an instant. She did not need the legendary pillar of fire right now. She only cared for the man who trusted her enough to let his shields down. When he laid down, pulling closer to her than he ever had before, seeking her quiet warmth and presence, Lilith welcomed him without a word. She wrapped her arms gently around him, letting her soft, dark wings drape over them both like a protective, velvet canopy, blocking out the rest of the world. She rested her cheek against his hair, her fingers gently tracing soothing circles on his back. Through their mental link, she didn't send complex thoughts or tactical plans. Only a deep, quiet tide of absolute safety, peace, and unconditional devotion. "I am here, Jax," she whispered in the quiet space of his mind, her thoughts as soft as a lullaby. "The world is locked outside. You don't have to carry anything anymore tonight. Just rest." Holding him close against the cool mountain night, she watched over his quiet breathing until his sleep became deep and peaceful, guarding his vulnerability in the gentle, untroubled dark.